While Sarah's living it up in the Big Apple, I'm kicking off May with some serious bad seeds. May, the month we celebrate mothers, feels like the perfect time to honor these mama Jamas. Women too wild, too weird, and way too powerful for polite society. Welcome to Bad Mama Jamas.
And so, since it's Mother's Day, I thought I would do something a little different. And I reached out to our mom and I was like, Mom, like, what's your favorite haunting or like ghost story? And so Mom picked this tale, which is absolutely horrifying and tragic. So this will be something you could discuss with your family, maybe over Mother's Day weekend. So Mom picked The Haunting of Anneliese Michel, the real life Emily Rose.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. I was like, whoa, Mom.
Okay.
Yeah. So that Mom went there. So this is for you on Mother's Day, Mom. This is your story that you know quite a lot about. And we're going to kick it back to 1973, and we're heading over to Germany, home of the Dash Hound. Just kidding, the Dachshund.
How long ago did you think of that joke?
Listen,
did you write it in there?
It's not in my notes. That was completely ad-lib. Like, well, the notes are loaded, so you can see. Like, that was 100% improv.
Oh, okay.
That's how good I am, you guys. That's how good I am. So, 1973, we're in Germany, and we have a young woman named Anneliese Michel. So she underwent a terrifying exorcism, as exorcisms tend to be. And to this day, the events of her exorcism still haunt experts and witnesses. And as I mentioned earlier, the exorcism of Emily Rose is based on these events. And Anneliese Michel is said to be one of the most possessed people in history.
Wow.
And okay. Her story is quite chilling. So here we go. Early life. Anneliese, born in 1952 in a small town in Bavaria, West Germany. Her family, devout Catholics, check. Her father...
If your parents are devoutly Catholic, you're probably going to get possessed.
Yeah, this is what our third exorcism I think that we've covered. So I thought maybe we could start like an exorcism checklist. So I'm like Catholic, check.
Or drinking game.
Yeah. So Adell and I, sidebar, used to play a drinking game. I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast, with Ghost Adventures. And we would get tore up pretty quick that game. I was like, oh my gosh. Do you remember the rules?
I know that when they debunked something, you had to drink.
Shot. Or was it? I think it was a double shot for debunk.
Yeah. And I know if Zach took his shirt off, you had to drink until he put it back on.
Yes. And then there was, I think, like anytime Aaron got scared, I think it was also a drink till he calmed down. So it was,
yeah.
We spent a lot of nights at your and Amanda's apartment.
Yeah. You would get tore up in the first 15 minutes.
It's like we hadn't even gotten to they haven't even been locked down yet. We're tipsy. All right. So back to this. So, devout Catholic family. So devout that her dad wanted to become a priest, and 3 of her aunts were already in the nunnery, so they are nuns.
Her dad wanted to become a priest, like before or after he was her dad.
I don't know.
Because I mean,
that's what I say. But anyway,
okay.
So the girls were not allowed to play with other children, and they spent most of their time indoors praying. So we've got check number 2, like religious, crazed family.
Okay. So an abusive, restrictive setting.
Yeah. So she was kind of a sickly little thing. She battled the measles, the mumps, and scarlet fever at a very young age. In addition, she was a skinny little thing and suffered from just all kinds of different ailments. Just kind of one of those people that's always sick. So,
yeah. Okay.
Kind of a side note there. Anneliese was pressured to, this is so fucked up, you guys, regularly atone for the sins of other people. She had to sleep on, and I'll give you an example. So she had to sleep on the floor as a penance for the drug addicts who slept on the ground. And she's like a young kid, okay? So her parents are like, you need to atone for their sins. So you sleep on this floor and atone for drug addicts that are sleeping on the street. So, I mean, this is kind of, this is, in my opinion, abusive.
This is straight up just abuse.
Yeah, so...
But she had to do it every night? Like, she had no bed. They were just like, you sleep on the floor because people do drugs.
I think she spent a lot of nights on the floor atoning for the sins of others, you know, as a young child. So, not real normal childhood there. Her family also attended mass twice a week. And Anneliese struggled with the harsh life, but she suffered in silence because obviously she couldn't have friends, or what is it from last week? She couldn't yoke with others. So she really didn't have anybody to talk to about any of this. And so at the age of 16, she was diagnosed with physical and psychological disorders, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Big shocker there. So she's living this really strict life, and then at age 16, that's when things start getting kind of kooky. So she turned 16 in the year of 1968, and she starts experiencing blackouts. So according to historical accounts, Anneliese would go into like these trance-like states, and during the first blackouts, she would just kind of walk aimlessly, just walking, but like blacked out. And then she would, this is so sad, she would also wet the bed during these trances that she would have. And her friends and family described these trances obviously as very disturbing. And so like, what is going on, you know?
I'd be afraid she has like something wrong with her brain. Like,
yeah.
Like she needs like a CAT scan or something.
Yeah, like this is like serious, right?
Like, what if it's like brain damage from all the scarlet fever crap she had when she was younger?
Exactly. So her family takes her to the doctor, just like, you know, an MD. And the visits just ended up being a huge waste of time because the physicians couldn't find anything wrong with her. Right? There's nothing wrong with her. We don't know what's wrong with your kid. She's 16. She's just a teenager. You know, she's fine. I don't know. She's acting out. Whatever. So that was, you know, a waste of everybody's time. And then in 1970, she was hospitalized with a case of tuberculosis.
Jeez.
And so while she was recovering, Anneliese claimed that she could hear odd sounds and voices and experienced euphoria. So this goes from, you can just see how things are really just spiraling out of control here. So the family then decides, hey, since this didn't really work with all the doctors, maybe we should see a neurologist, as you were saying, to determine if there's, you know, something wrong with her brain. So shortly after meeting with the neurologist, she was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. And so she could suffer from seizures, loss of memories. She could experience visual or auditory hallucinations, which might explain like the voices, you know, that she said that she could hear. And in addition, she was also, on top of that, suffering from depression and anxiety. And so to make matters worse, you know, especially with the way she was raised, like, of course, I can see where she would have some depression, anxiety, and things. And so, so she started to hear voices that no one else could hear and see things that weren't there. And so this neurologist is like, that's probably from the epilepsy. Mm-hmm. And so her mental state continued to decline, and you would think that it would be getting better, right? Because she's seeing a professional that is like, you know, it's understanding that there's some issues with her brain. But her epilepsy was likely caused by something called Geschwin syndrome, and it's characterized as an excessive verbal and writing output. So it's like you can hear things, see things. Also, you can have altered sexuality. You can be hyper religious.
What is altered sexuality?
I don't know what that means.
I'm gonna Google that.
Yeah, Google that. Why don't you? And it also intensifies cognitive behaviors and emotional responses. So it could make you, act a little crazed. So she was prescribed some medicine to help control her seizures, but the drugs did not help her attacks. So like, okay, this will help with your seizures, but we can't help with these trance-like attacks that you claim that you're having. Did you find anything?
No, like, it was so not a helpful definition.
Yeah, like, what do they mean, altered sexuality?
I don't know what that means, unless it just means, like, I don't know, your sexuality is different than it typically is.
Like what you like typically identify as or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Sure, we'll go with that.
And we have to remember too, this time it was the 60s and 70s, so
everyone was being abused and
everyone was being abused.
Everybody's now dealing with their trauma.
Yeah, pretty much. And so Anneliese, so despite all this shit she's going through, she did register for the University of Würzburg in 1973, and she still continued her studies and got a college education, like despite all this craziness she's going through. But she fell more into depression and believed that she was damned no matter what she did.
Wow.
I think it's amazing that she was able to go to university.
That was probably a good distraction, I would assume.
Yeah, I would assume. But I mean, she's all the stuff that she's suffering, it's pretty debilitating,
Yeah.
And so she personally, Anneliese, believed that demons possessed her. She said that she would have daylight hallucinations of devil faces everywhere she looked. She felt like she could see demons. She complained of a sore throat. She even had her tonsils removed, and she became adverse to religious symbols. So she said that so she stopped going to mass. She refused to drink holy water, and she would not even look at a crucifix. So things are getting
sounds like the typical other possessed children.
Yes, you're going to see a lot of similarities, I think. And so her parents claimed that they did what they could do to help their daughter, but her behavior became more bizarre. So reports indicated that she licked her urine from the floor. She stripped naked and ate insects. And she compulsively performed hundreds of squats a day until she ruptured the ligament in her knees.
What?
Yes. And she would crawl under the table and bark like a dog, which she did for 2 days.
I thought you just said fart like a dog.
No, bark. I mean, she might have farted too like a dog, which, I mean, that's like my dog farts. Whoa. Yeah. So, I mean,
it's like she became feral.
She became feral. So her family is like, okay, let's try to seek more medical attention here. But Anneliese, you got to remember, she's a grown-up at this point, right? So Anneliese begged for religious intervention, even after being denied twice for an exorcism. So her family's like, no, I really think we need medical professional help. And she's like, no, I don't. I want religious help. I want an exorcism. And she was denied 2 times.
I'm surprised.
I'm surprised she wanted that.
Yeah, I'm surprised her parents are actually really going down the path of science.
Me too. I'm surprised that they even took her to a doctor and they just didn't call in the priest.
Yeah, I think that's kind of odd.
It is.
Like how religious they are.
And I think it's kind of odd too that, it's really sad because, she's an adult living at home, obviously. And so, her parents, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess she makes those decisions, even though I don't know why you couldn't. I guess it'd be hard to maybe deem her incompetent and then have the parents make the decisions. I don't know. But anyway, she's calling the shots, right?
Yeah.
And so the exorcisms begin. So here we go. So her parents did as she wished, and they took her to see Ernest Alt, who believed in her possession. He's like, okay, yeah, I think that you were definitely possessed. And he thought that she did not look like she was epileptic. and he petitioned.
How does one look like an epileptic?
I don't know how one looks like an epileptic, but he says, oh no, like you don't have, we're not going to listen to the neurologist. He's, bonkers. You're definitely possessed by demons. Okay. So
I mean, maybe he did see her. To be fair, maybe he was like, you're licking your pee off the floor. Like you're possessed. You look possessed. You don't look like an epileptic. Maybe it was the context.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was like, now you barked like a dog for 2 whole days? Like what? Like, so yeah, maybe it's like
an epileptic.
Like, I know folks that have epilepsy, and I don't think that they've done those things. But
okay. All right. See people, context is everything.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so Ernest is like, okay, let's petition the local bishop, Joseph Stengel, for help. And so Father, there's a whole, we've learned we've learned a lot about exorcisms, and there's a process, right? So you just don't get one. There's a whole process. So Ernest kind of gets the ball rolling. Father Renz, a priest who's experienced in carrying exorcisms, was commissioned to do this exorcism, and Ernest could help perform the rite. So the Catholic Church again hesitated to perform an exorcism on Anneliese. So remember, they already denied her twice, and this third time they're still hesitant for some reason about it.
They denied her 3 times.
3 times. So 2 times denied, third time they're like, I don't like it, but we'll do it. Only after obtaining compelling evidence of her possession. So September 24th, 1975, Father Renz performs the first exorcism that revealed at least 6 demons inhabiting Annaliese's little body. So 6 demons. Now here we go. You ready? They're biggins.
Oh, who all's in there?
Lucifer.
You can't lead with Lucifer.
Cain.
Wait, Cain's a demon?
Well, he's in her body.
I guess he became one.
Judas.
Well, okay.
Hitler. Nero, who was an evil emperor of Rome.
These are like all the antichrists could be.
And Fleischmann, who was a disgrace priest. So she's got a lot of evil happening, right?
My.
So they all took up residence inside her. This is like their first exorcism, and this are the 6 demons that revealed themselves. So they restrained her for hours during these recorded sessions while the priest performed the rites, but to no avail. Slowly but surely, little Anneliese stopped eating and her body began to diminish. So I do want to tell you, you can hear, they have these recordings, and I listen to them, and they are scary as fuck. Like, you can pull them up and actually listen to these, like, on YouTube, and it's really disturbing. So,
like, is it disturbing what's happening to her by them, or like the demonic stuff?
Just, and these are just recordings, so you can't really see like what they're doing to her, but just the way her voice sounds, and it's just it's the creepiest. And one of when I was doing my research, I said that these are some of the creepiest exorcism recordings of record. They're pretty awful, but it just sounds, I can't really even put it into words. It's horrifying. And this poor little thing she underwent 67 fucking exorcisms. 67.
Whoa. And what span of time throughout her life?
Just until 1976. So this is in a year. Not even a full year. That's absurd. I feel like
that.
Yeah.
Can you not, like, I don't know, I'm kind of curious, like, can you not, if you go and you get approved for an exorcism, like, can you not be like, actually, no, I decided I want to opt out? Can you not do that?
I mean, 67 exorcisms. And guys, this story is so messed up. So by this point, Anneliese is totally unrecognizable. She was only 68 pounds.
Oh, God.
covered in bruises and bed sores. And she was also malnourished and dehydrated. And her hair also started to fall out. And you can see these pictures, and it's really upsetting. It's very upsetting to me. So this is the worst. The exorcisms continued until she died. She actually died of malnutrition and dehydration on July 1976.
Did anybody get tried?
Oh, that's next.
Okay.
All in court TV, because we're going to see the judge.
Will this be more entertaining than next week, I guess? Just popcorn all around.
I mean, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, so the other two, so we did Anna Eklund. And Roland Doe.
Yeah.
And they didn't die.
No, and they didn't have nearly as many. Actually, so, I think Roland,
this is the first one we covered.
They only had a handful.
This is the first one we've covered where the person dies. It's pretty bad. And I'm sorry, 67, like, that's absurd.
Because didn't Anna Eklund only have like 2 or 3?
I think so.
And over like 2 years or something.
I don't think any of them have had more than 3 to 5, but 60 and like over, like you said, like years. I mean, she had her first exorcism September 24th, 1975, and then she died in July 1976. When I tell you,
this isn't right.
This story bothers me like on so many levels. Like I was like, my God, Mom, this story is awful. So let's get to court. So believing, this is what I think is this. I was on her parents' side until this point. So her family believes that Anneliese sacrificed herself for the sins of the youth. And the priest in her family had thought her to be a martyr.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But
see, with people like that and their circular logic, they're never wrong. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, how do you fix, like, that? You can't reason with people like that.
No. And so, yes, like, I cried and got so fucking mad. I mean, I hate this story.
This reminds me so much of that one story about that girl who was like being watched by some friends of the family or something. Her and her sister like moved in. It was like around the same time period, and she like was beat to death.
Ugh.
You remember that?
No.
It was awful. Like,
well, I feel like this kind of parallels, like, and now granted, I'm not a true crime girl, so don't like send me hate mail if I get this wrong, but like going on now, the Doomsday Mom trial, how she killed 2 kids because she felt like they were zombies, and the only way she could free them was to kill them, like, and like she married that crazed guy that, you know, like they killed her, like his wife too, and because they're evil, and you know they had to free their souls. I mean, this borderlines that for me. I'm sorry, like
but it's like, are these people mentally ill though? Is where I always really don't know, and I hate.
Like, but I think we can easily see that this 67 exorcisms. Okay, she's not eating. She's 68 pounds. Like, this is not okay to let this continue to happen.
And I don't understand.
Regardless if she's possessed by these 6 demons or she's mentally ill, this is not okay.
Right.
And so
but it wasn't just the parents, it was also the priest.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's get to court. So, you know, the priest performing this and her parents thought of her as a martyr. Bavaria did not see it that way and charged all 4 individuals with neglectful homicide.
Wait, who's the 4th?
So 2 parents and then the 2 priests.
Oh, the 2. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So they were charged with negligent homicide, and the defendants pleaded not guilty. Like, we're not guilty of this. And so, despite the audio recordings of the exorcism and Annaliese's testimony of her possession throughout all of them, All 4 individuals were found guilty of negligent homicide. The 2 priests were sentenced to 6 months in jail, which was later suspended, so they did nothing, no time.
They only got 6 months, even found guilty?
They only ended up getting 3 months probation. They didn't serve any time for this, none. And her parents were exempt from punishment because they had, quote, suffered enough, which is a criteria for sentencing in German law.
Okay.
Yeah, so nobody did any time. And so here's the spooky part. Autopsies show that Anneliese's brain showed absolutely no signs of epileptic damage, even on a microscopic level. So
but that was in the 70s?
Yeah.
I mean, so I really don't know how much they knew back then versus now.
That is the horrific story of Anneliese Michel, and I think it is absolutely horrifying. Now, whether she was truly possessed or had some mental disorder, obviously we had an abusive childhood, right? Like, I think that we can see how a lot of things played into her mind. But like how you get 67 exorcisms, how you wither away to 68 pounds, and that's still happening is what haunts me the most about this story. Like, it bothers me. It bothers me so bad.
And it's just like, I don't understand what was going on in the exorcisms to cause all this.
Right?
It sounds to, I don't know. Like, were they denying her food, or was she not eating it?
She was not eating. But I think if she is denying herself food, then you got to get her in a hospital and get an IV or something in her. Even if she's saying at this point, like, because, yes, she did say that she wanted the exorcisms, she wanted all of this, they have it on tape, whatever. But I think at this point, before we get to 68 pounds, parents could intervene and get their kid in a hospital and get some IV treatment, something, and get her help. Like, this is too much. And I don't know if her parents, because the priest and the parents are like, oh no, she's a martyr, like, she's just doing this for the sins of others. Like, I don't know. I don't like it.
I don't know. I guess it really kind of... Did she also ask for help at any time? Like, I don't know. It's just like, I kind of don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, she asked for religious intervention.
Well, right, but
I don't know if, like, while these 67 exorcisms are going on, if she's like, stop, I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, or do they think... I don't know. To me, exorcisms are scary anyway, because, it's kind of like, why would anybody believe a word that comes out of your mouth? You know what I mean? If they don't think it's really you. So I just already think it's a dangerous situation anyway.
It is such a dangerous
to not be able to advocate for yourself. Like,
well, and then doesn't that kind of borderline, okay, all right, if you are demon possessed, and I'm not saying that it doesn't really happen, like, I'm not making a case for it. I think that it could, but if you are possessed, let's say you're possessed, okay, then couldn't you override your adult child and be like, they can't really think for themselves, so I'm going to intervene for their care? And how do you prove that in a court of law? And how does that all happen? You know what I mean? Like, that has to be a slippery slope to go down.
I don't know. I mean, it's almost like, can't you just induce her into a coma while you do the possessions?
I mean, yeah, or something.
Or something. Like, if they're that horrible.
All the exorcisms, like, we've watched, not live, but like on TV, we've not been a part of any exorcisms. But it just seems mentally and physically exhausting. And I can't believe 67 times, like, at what point do they stop? You know what I mean? Say enough.
Or like at one point you're like, wow, this isn't working.
Yeah. And at
Like,
what point do you
geez.
say, like, this is a human being, like, we can't do this anymore to her, even if she's saying, or the demons are saying, deprive her of food or whatever. Like, at what point do you're like, okay, we got to stop this mess?
Well, I think that's the whole problem, really, of religion. But especially when you think someone's possessed, it dehumanizes you. Like,
Yeah.
she's not that person anymore. Now she's Lucifer and Hitler. So of course you want her to suffer,
Suffer and
maybe.
hurt.
Because it's not
But
really her.
I don't know. I don't like that. I
But
just,
yeah, I mean, just the sheer number of exorcisms and the short amount of time until her death, that was clearly just abuse.
I think so too. I mean, I absolutely think so. And it's just, and I feel like it was reckless. Like, okay, obviously you're dealing with someone that's not stable, whether it's because of the demon possession or we have some mental whatever. You still have to look at the individual. Like, yeah, you may want to like hurt the demons that are taking residence in her, but it's not her, and you still have to take care of her body and her needs and her, you know what I mean? Her day to
Right.
day. And I just feel like the fact that they just kept letting her not eat and do these exorcisms is extremely reckless.
And I'm just assuming that her parents probably weren't present for most of this. Like, she was
I,
probably just kept
yeah,
away.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I feel like that they were because there's pictures of them with her. So, like, they're seeing their daughter like a skeleton.
Like, waste away.
Yeah. And they're seeing her bruises in her bed stores. It's like she has like these. If you just Google a picture of her and you just see like these little dark, like bruises under her eyes and her little arms are like that big around, like it's horrible. Like, it doesn't take anybody to see, like, oh, this girl's going to die. Like, she needs fucking help, not another exorcism.
I don't
I just,
know.
it infuriates me beyond belief. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not saying that, demon possession isn't real, but this to me goes beyond, and it's
I
just
mean,
pure abuse.
but it all also like, who regulates this stuff?
I have no idea. Like,
I
isn't there? I
mean,
mean, and that's another thing that I find hard to believe, and maybe I need to get educated in exorcisms, but it's like there's such a chain that you have to go up to get approved, right? Because like she was denied almost 3 times for one. But is there not, like, once the exorcism is granted, or is there no checks in place so that stuff like this doesn't happen?
I
Or
don't
maybe there
know.
is now since this case, but I would hope that there would be checks and balances in place during and after, not just to approve one. And like, and did, like, the higher ups even know this was happening 67 times? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many unknowns.
Or
um
right, but even if they do, I think that's another fuss I have about religion, is do you or do you not want to 100% operate within the laws and regulations of the country in which you live? But it seems like a lot of religions want to have it both ways. Like, no, I want to vote and influence the way everybody else around me can live, but I don't want any laws or anybody telling me what I can do.
I agree, and I think it's a real problem. And without calling names or calling anybody out, Adele and I went to a mega church where they offered counseling to people, but they weren't licensed counselors. And I think that that is dangerous because, let's face it, yeah, there is the supernatural. Obviously, we dig it, we're into it. We wouldn't have this podcast if we weren't. But there's also mental illness and things that are very serious that people go to school for years to understand. And I just think it's taken advantage of people that maybe can't afford that care that they really, really need, or they've been told, oh, well, Jesus can handle this for you. God can handle this for you. You don't need to go to that professional. We got it. And that could be a real dangerous slope. And I'm not knocking anyone's religious beliefs, but I'm just saying that can be dangerous. And I think that's a real fine line, especially we see it in a lot of different religious circles. Like, I'm not saying that miracles don't happen. Sure, they do, but I don't think that can replace that. you really need to see a professional too, like for certain things. Like it doesn't take that place of mental illness is real. It needs to be addressed with a professional, not someone that just took like an online class, like
And
I don't
I
like
mean,
that.
I'm just gonna break it to you. Prayer doesn't solve everything. Like, sometimes you need medication. Like, I think this girl had physical and mental problems.
For sure.
And
For
you
sure
can't
she
pray
did.
that away. She needed treatment.
She needed treatment, and yeah, she definitely needed help. She needed help, and I think that I think maybe the way that she was raised may have made her feel like, oh no, I'll just, I'll go, get, an exorcism versus going to see a psychiatrist or what have you. And it makes me really, really sad.
I have so many questions. I wish she had like kept a journal or something
Well,
because
let me get out my Ouija board and
hey, there we go.
let's do an interview. I wish I could. We have some questions, Anneliese.
Mom, you brought up the topic, so you have to do a seance with us.
Yeah, and we're doing it at your house too, by the way.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Fox sisters?
Oh yes, I have heard of the Fox sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Picture it. Here we are. Picture this. March 31st, 1848. Humble country home in Hydesville, New York. Something strange has begun. That night, a young Kate and Maggie claimed to communicate with a spirit. Apparently the spirit has been haunting their house for weeks, and the entire Fox family, including the girls' mother and father and their older sister, had heard strange knocking sounds and furniture moving all hours and just craziness for the past several weeks. So Kate and Maggie, the two youngest sisters, they were sick of it. So what do? They challenged the spirit to respond to Kate's finger snapping, and everyone's horror, it did. So these sisters, the Fox sisters, so now I'm going to get boring for you guys. So the Fox sisters, there are actually a lot of children, but the only ones we really need to worry about are Kate and Maggie, okay? And Kate was around 11 and Maggie was like 14, so like, that preteen sort of age. And then they had an older sister, Leah, that wasn't living in the home all the time at that time, okay? And so so the girls basically they started asking the spirit different questions, kind of like what you see kind of today. Like, how you'll see the paranormal shows and they'll be like, if you can hear me, knock once, or like turn the light on once. So very similar to that, so like they start asking the spirit like questions, right? Like, are you a spirit? Knock once,
just
yes,
or
no for no. Yeah, just very simple questions. And so so they asked the spirit if someone had killed him, and the spirit says yes. It doesn't say it, but it knocks. Yes, someone killed them. And so obviously in the small town, 1800s, word gets around, right? Like, what the hell is going on? Like, these two little girls have, like, there's a spirit in the house. Apparently it had been rumored that this house was haunted anyway. And so now it's like these kids can talk to a spirit. And you have to remember, like, this is spiritualism. It's about to boom, but this is still like, wait, what? This doesn't make sense, And so all the neighbors gather because they want to see this, like, these kid prodigies talking to these spirits or what have you. And so so whenever the neighbors come over, they basically perform this little ritual for them to all see. And they ask the spirit, they're like, what's your name? And I guess like they would do like the alphabet, like first letter, knock once for A, 2 for B, 3 for C, and then it's like C. And so they would like spell it out, you know what I mean? And so his name was Charles Rosna. And then they asked what happened, and he said that he was murdered. And he was murdered, they got him to spell out the name, by John Bell, who happened to be a former tenant of their house.
Like the Bell Witch? John Bell?
Maybe. I thought that name sounded familiar.
Yeah. That was a different state, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was, wasn't that Kentucky or something like that?
It's like a southern state, right?
No, Tennessee. It was Tennessee.
That's so weird, but we don't know where he lived before.
He could have moseyed on to New York, you know? I don't know.
Interesting.
It could track. But
did you say how long they were living in this house before the activity started?
It wasn't long at all. And it was known that it was haunted. Like, they're moving in, and so it was just kind of like, oh, what are these noises? Like, what is this? Like, what's going on? And so the girls, and neighbors saw this, and they discovered that the spirit was someone that was murdered, and it was murdered, the murderer, John Bell, who was a former tenant. And so with my research, I've heard several accounts. One account said that the neighbors and like the dad went to the basement and found human remains. But I've heard other accounts say no, something happened and there was a flood and they couldn't go to the basement to confirm. So I don't know which one. I mean, you know how stories get passed down. Who knows? But anyway, these neighbors are, of course, like freaking out because they're like, oh my God, like these girls have this like gift. We've never seen anything like this, because you've got to remember, this is long before any of this has gotten popular, right? So word doesn't only spread in the neighborhood, it just goes viral. Like, these girls it's just crazy. So after this little ritual that took place at the Fox household, the two girls, Maggie and Kate, they were like, these girls have this mediumistic powers, and they just, by November 1849, they were already like given public performances of their skills, and the spiritual movement was born. So the mania to communicate with the dead swept the country, and the Fox sisters immediately launched into fame. And so you've got to remember, like, these are just kids. Like, they're 11 and 14. Spiritualism is they're the reason a lot of people say that it even started, really. And then it goes from like neighborhood to all of a sudden you're doing these performances, and it's nuts. And then you have to also consider too that a lot of people had a lot of death, especially back then, like a lot of just a lot of we not having modern medicine, so there was a lot of hurt. And so I think the thought that I could commune with a loved one brought people hope, and so it obviously took off, and it just got completely crazy fast. and again, these are kids, like 11 and 14, so it's a big deal. So after their initial rise to stardom, the sisters continued to appear in a lot of different venues. They were joined then by their older sister, Leah. And this is some BS. So her husband had left her and her daughter, and she was living in poverty. But then she gets word that her sisters are, my sisters have this gift. So she becomes their manager. How convenient.
I was literally about to ask if they had a manager and how they're doing all this and stuff.
Leah saw an opportunity and she took it 100%. And so, so she's like, I'm gonna manage you. Don't you worry about a thing. I'm back in your lives. Like, yeah. So, some newspapers and public venues held them as frauds, right? They're like, this can't happen. This isn't real. Like, well, they were definitely on Houdini's camp. They're like, this is bullshit. Like, not happening. And so, regardless of what the papers and the skeptics said, people didn't care. They still came in like mass numbers to see this phenomenon, and they didn't mind paying at all, and see this. And and you think about it, I listened to I either listened to or read something that was talking about, and I thought this was such an interesting take on the Fox sisters. I had never heard this take before, but it makes sense. At this time in the 1800s, women didn't have a voice, right? if you were a woman, you basically were going to be laboring children and working on a farm or whatnot. So this was a way women could really make a living for themselves, is to get into this. It was a way that women could push radical ideas that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. It was a way they could support themselves. And especially during this rise of spiritualism, people would pay anything to talk to a loved one. And so that's why I think, unfortunately, like, I am on the Houdini camp, and that I do believe that there truly are mediums and people with gifts, but I think there are a lot of frauds out there, unfortunately, that take advantage of people's situation, which I agree with Houdini in that regard. And so I just think that this was an opportunity that people, even if they were frauds, I mean, what choice did they really have? I thought that was a really interesting.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
It makes sense. It's almost like pastors who say the most hateful things, but they're not accountable for what they say because the Holy Spirit's speaking through them.
Right.
So now these women can be more outspoken because it's not really them talking.
Exactly.
Something.
It opened up. For the first time, I think it opened up a platform for women to have a voice and to earn their own money. And so, of course, I mean, even if people didn't have this gift, I could see where the appeal would be to, like, fuck that. Like, yeah, like, this is the way I can change my life. So obviously you had a lot of people flooding this market to create a better life for themselves. But unfortunately, it was sometimes at the expense of people that were hurting. But I do believe that there truly are people with this power and this gift. I really do.
I think it's very rare.
I think it's very rare too, but I do think it does exist for sure. But I do think a lot of people say that they do or whatever, and So that was the case here as well with everybody that got into it. So Leah was their manager, as I said. So they just took the show like even bigger. So Margaret and Kate toured like all these cities, and they were just, I mean, seances that they would perform became like crazy elaborate. Like they would get like objects moving around and tables levitating. So it's like once they got their manager, like, we got to really up our game, and like really bring a show, if you will.
It almost makes you wonder though if at one point maybe it was true, and then they had to just up their ante and it became like really tainted and bogus.
Yes, yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? So suddenly people, like I was saying, got into this market as well. And so they weren't really a phenomenon anymore because other people were flooding the market. And so they would be like, I can do this, or I can, I'm also a medium. And so, like, they were not getting they were still famous, but they weren't getting as many gigs once the market kind of got flooded with other folks.
They were also right up there at that time against Houdini.
Exactly. Like, all of this is like happening here.
If it were me in the day and I had to pick between the two shows, I would see Houdini every time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would want to go to both, but yeah. So, a newspaper editor, Horace Greeley, provided quarters for the girls to stay at his mansion. And Greeley, this is so sad, he was grieving over the death of his little boy. And so he really wanted the sisters to, he wanted to be able to talk to his son. And so he was like, I will let you stay at my mansion, and I will also like pay for your education and whatever it takes so I can communicate with my son who's passed. And so Leah accepted his offer for Kate because she wasn't as talented as Maggie. And so she's like, Kate can stay, but Maggie's got to come with me. So she split the sisters up because she's like, Kate's dead weight, so she can stay.
Wow. Even as a manager, like, I wouldn't think that's a good decision because the fame is the Fox sisters.
Exactly. But, things were,
Maybe she didn't get the shitty end of the stick at the end of it, though.
Well, I'll tell you more about that. So, obviously the girls were definitely the show. Everybody, they were always exposed as skeptics and fakes, and they claim they produced their phenomena in a variety of ways. From like the critics would say that you're popping your toes, or you're making this noise, like, you know, with your knee or your ankle, or they even like accused them of like being I can never say this word, ventriloquists, like throwing their voices. And so they actually had, and I wonder if Harry Houdini was ever on one of these, but they actually had a committee that was created to test the powers of these people.
Are you kidding? Houdini would have loved that.
Right? Like, he would have been the chair. Like, yes. And so, I'm like, I wonder, you know, how many of those he served on, or,
They probably didn't let him be a part of it.
No, he was there like, no.
Nope, we'll figure it out.
And so most, let's see here. So most involved, like, what they would do is they would pose questions to the spirits, and while the replies were often inconsistent, they were accurate enough to make an impression. So they were like, okay, like, yeah, like that checks. And this is so messed up. But one test involved the girls being, well, no, this one is bad. So they would like bind their ankles so that they couldn't move their feet. And then they would even, they could still make the sound, or the sound was still there. So like, okay, they're not popping their ankles or their toes or whatever. And then a committee of women, this is the part that's messed up, would check the girls' undergarments to ensure that they didn't have anything hidden to make the sound. Can you imagine sticking something up your hoo-hoo or your butt, like, to try to make a, like, I would have rocked this because I'm such a farter and can fart on cue, that I would have probably been like, I could have done it.
It's just like, what, cracking? Like, what, I want to know what these noises specifically were.
Yeah, I was like, what were they looking for?
Like,
but so despite anything that the committee did, the committee was forced to admit that they were not able to detect any fraud. They're like, we did all these tests, we couldn't detect any fraud. So, in spite of this, though, many activities had been questioned. So Leah, remember, manager, sister, she was often accused of trying to get personal information from folks going, like, the people at the seance. So like she said, it would just help the spirits. And so like she was trying to like dig for personal information.
So she was the original phishing scheme.
Leah was the fisher.
I just really need the last 4 of your social.
Yeah. And date of birth.
And legal full name. Now I think we can get somewhere.
Hang on. Do you go by a nickname? Yeah. So that was Leah working the rain. But they also excelled at calling in the spirits of the famous dead. But you know, that information
it's well known.
Yeah, exactly. So
like, I know she's not dead, but I imagine them calling in someone like Sharon, and she's just like, whoa, you know, like, yeah, of course everybody thinks that. Like,
yeah, it's yeah. So they would do that a lot, and the results, obviously, you know, folks weren't really impressed. You know, they're like, really, like, yeah, okay. So when one person that attended noted that Benjamin Franklin's spirit seems to be surprisingly lacking good grammar. Here's the funny thing. Maggie, remember, she's the one that wasn't educated. She stomped away from the seance table and said, you know, I never understood good grammar. Like, talking to, like, to Leah. So it's kind of like,
what the hell he was saying.
I know. I would love to know.
Like, yeah, he really was well spoken.
Yeah.
Like, we're contacting Benjamin Franklin. You know, he's like, "Hello, it's me, old Ben,"
or something crazy like, "It's bow time," or you know, like what did she say? Like, I would love to know what she said. And they were just like, the room was just like, Actually, wrong Ben Franklin. There's another, no, this is another Ben Franklin. There's someone else named Ben Franklin, okay?
Oh, Ben Franklin. I thought you said Ben Franken.
Sorry. So, regardless of like these little incidents at the seances, there were still enough people that are like, no, it's genuine. So they were still getting good business regardless of these little hiccups. So, okay. So Maggie eventually abandoned mediumship and fell in love. So
Okay.
she is in Philadelphia. She meets and falls in love with an Arctic explorer.
Dennis Reynolds or Mac. Like it sounds like one of the Always Sunny people.
Sweet D falls in love.
I'm the
Leaves
Arctic
mediumship.
Explorer.
Yeah. I'm like, who marries an Arctic explorer? But she does.
Maybe it's
And
Aleister
so
Crowley.
it's Aleister Crowley. How did you know? No, it's Elijah Kent Kane. Kent Kane. Oh my God, that does sound like It's Always Sunny. Or
Yep.
what is it? Orange County. Joe
Yeah.
John. What's your name? Joe. Joe John. His name is
Joe
Joe
John?
John. Joe Johnston.
Why aren't you wearing any pants, Joe?
They fell off in the flames. I was running. Orange County, if you've never watched it, you should. It's
That's a good
great.
one.
It is a good one. Adele says that I acted like Catherine O'Hara in that movie when she went to college, and I did. I acted just like that when Adele went to college, even though it's right down the
Only
street.
when I went to college. Like anytime
Remember?
I've gone away.
Well, that's true. Why do you have to go?
Yeah, why do you have to move to Chicago? After that, you're kind of like, whatever.
Yeah, but that was a rough one. Going to college down the street from me, and like literally, like I was on the same block.
She was literally like 3 blocks away from campus.
And it crushed me. And then she moved to Chicago, and it was a lot like that scene. You have to leave me. Not natural to spend as much time with you. I'm just a loving sister. So, Kent Kane, the dashing son of an aristocratic family, no doubt. So, they did not think Maggie was worthy of marrying their elite.
Well, what was that even like when she first met him? If she made such a mockery of Benjamin Franklin, like, what did she say to these people? Like, how's it going? What's for dinner? Like, what could that have possibly been like the first time he brought her home to like meet?
And then they're like, what do you do for a living?
I talked to the dead.
Yeah, like it's.
I don't know why I keep making her Southern when she's from New York, but still.
Yeah, I know, right?
She just sounds like a pig.
Bless her heart. Like, oh. So, but this was so sweet. So, they were like, Maggie is not worthy. And so they exchanged vows and rings in the company of friends, but were never legally wed. How sweet.
Wow.
So, unfortunately, the affair ended in tragedy when Kane died in 1857. Maggie was left brokenhearted and penniless. She had abandoned being a medium, but now she didn't have a choice. The girl had to get back to work, right? So she began, this is also really sad, y'all. She began drinking, and her health and her mental state began to really decline.
Yeah, that's people who drank back then. I don't even think they had like a legal limit on how much alcohol you could put in things, right? Like, I don't even want to know how effed up you'd get.
I mean, it would have to be deadly. Easily,
Like, oof. Just like straight up like rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, and you just think about like what she's been through. Like, I mean,
I'm assuming Leah has taken all of her money anyway that she previously earned.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, like I mean, why else would she be penniless? Like Leah's living high on the hog of her sister's talents. So remember Kate that got to stay get educated?
Maybe Maggie should have been the one to go to school.
Yeah. And what's sad is the newspaper editor, he offered it for both of the girls. Remember, Leah is the one that said no. So it's kind of messed up. So Kate did fare a little better than her sister, but she too was paying the price for her fame. She also began drinking, which often wreaked havoc on her performances. So although she was still having trouble controlling her alcoholism, she did travel to England in 1871, and she was able to stay sober long enough to perform a number of British spiritualists, or with a number of British spiritualists. So she remained in England, and the following year she married Henry Jenkin, who was a barrister, with whom she had 2 sons. The first son, Ferdinand, was born in 1873, and he was reportedly a medium by the time he was 3 years old. It was said that spirits took over his body and caused an unearthly glow to emanate from his eyes.
What?
So it sounds like to me she had them off, man. Ferdinand's a little scary to me.
Maybe it was Damien. Like, what the hell? I think he was maybe a little Jersey Devil in him.
It's like, Ferdinand wasn't a medium. He's straight up demon.
Maybe they're in contact with something they shouldn't have.
If my baby glowed, I don't know, man.
I don't even understand what that means. Like, his eyes glowed?
Is it kind of like Dad glowed because Grandma, like gave him too much? Because remember, have you ever seen that baby picture of Dad? And it's like he almost glows. So I think she, like, gave him, like, too much of something.
Yes. See, that makes sense, because it was, like, too much of, like, a mineral. I don't know, something.
Yeah. But Ferdinand, they said it was an unearthly glow, but it emanated from his eyes. Like, that seems scary. That seems like an alien baby. I don't know.
Did he have, like, glaucoma? Like, is he okay?
Oh, no! What if he did? What if they didn't know what it was? And, like, it's obviously his gift, and it's like the baby has glaucoma.
Yeah, like, it doesn't sound good.
Poor Ferdinand.
And you know, she just rolled with that. It was like, yeah, it's a gift. It's like,
it's the gift.
Is it?
Look into his eyes.
I think it might be a disease, honey.
Bless. All right. So, by 1885, spiritualism was kind of on its way out, right? And so, investigations of fraud, Harry Houdini doing his thing, like, it was like, this has got to stop. So, both of the sisters, obviously, this impacted them earning wages. And so Maggie was actually called before a commission in New York to prove her skills. So she had to, like, basically come and do this by herself. And the tests that she took, she failed miserably. And
wasn't she not really even practicing this at this point?
Well, remember, she had to go back to work after her beau passed.
Okay. I figured she was just kind of like a sloppy drunk, so people didn't really take her serious anyway.
Yeah,
I'm kind of surprised they even called her before this commission.
She was, I guess she was like, I gotta make money, and they're like, oh, we gotta check you out, before you're doing this. And so she failed, and Kate, so Kate's husband, remember, she married the barrister and had the demon baby. So he dies too from a stroke, and so she moves back to the United States. So she's back in New York, and she was arrested for drunkenness, and welfare workers took her sons.
Well, yeah, it sounds like one has glaucoma or something. It's just not like doing anything.
Yeah, and so Maggie, who and Kate still remain close. They were unable to so Maggie couldn't get the boys for herself, but she did manage to get them into a custody of an uncle that lived in England. So hopefully they got some stability and some help there. So in 1888, Maggie decides to make an infamous appearance when she denounced spiritualism as a total sham.
Dun, dun, dun. What's her angle there?
So, the years of alcohol abuse, loneliness, and grief had taken their toll on her, and she weighed the idea of committing suicide before finally choosing to come clean. So, she booked the stage at a New York Academy of Music and walked out on stage to announce that she and Kate had created the strange noises that they had heard in Hydesville home by simply cracking their toes. She also stated that Leah and her that Leah had forced them to participate as mediums for the public to make money. And she says, I have seen so much miserable deception. That is why I am willing to state that spiritualism is a fraud of the worst deception. So, sitting in a box overlooking the stage, Kate silently affirmed her sister's confession. So, here we go. You ready for this? Ready for this? When the Fox sisters finally confessed their fraud, they didn't do it out of guilt, they did it out of spite. So in 1888, in a bit of hurt, Leah, Kate, and Maggie sold off the real truth about their paranormal abilities to a New York World reporter. So the same day that story came out, they appeared at that public event to give a demonstration of how they had fooled everyone for decades and decades. So basically, it was exactly what the skeptics expected. Maggie showed how she would crack her toe joints under her skirts, sending ripples of the sound throughout the theater. Then the sisters confessed that they had started the game all the way back in childhood. So remember when I said that at night, or how that they would always hear like furniture moving? So they had actually, what they did is when they went to bed, they tied an apple to a string and they would bob it up and down, causing the apple to bump the floor to scare their mom.
Wow.
So no one even suspected them because they were so young. And the guy that they accused of killing or whatever, he actually did live in that town and was shunned. And he never did that. They made it all up.
Oh, wow. I wonder if he was like an undesirable or something. Like,
yeah. So like all of the things in Hydesville, they totally made up. It was just a game. And it just got way out of control. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that sounds like the true side of the story.
When let's see, where am I? Okay, so critics were like, yeah, like we knew that you're full of shit. But devoted spiritualists, though, they said, they denounced it. They're like, you're lying. You're lying. You are a medium. And so the devoted spiritualist said that that she was just a sad drunk, and Kate did not speak to the public at that public appearance. Remember, she was in the box, but she stated that she didn't. That later, as you remember, she agreed with her confession. Then later on, Kate said that she did not agree with her sister, and she continued to perform as a medium. So I think she was like, no, she's lying, whatever. And so in 1891, Margaret would recant her confessions. Many have said that the confession was just a sham. They're like, oh, the girls just made it up. And so they maintained that Maggie and Kate only renounced the movement just because of Leah. It's just because they wanted to embarrass her. So, Leah had since married a wealthy and respectable businessman, and using the fortune that the girls had gained, she had turned her back on Maggie and Kate, and she considered them a complete embarrassment. And here's the sad part. So Kate later drank herself to death in July of 1892 at the age of 56. Her body was discovered by one of her sons, and then Margaret died in March of 1893 at age 59 at a friend's home, or in a friend's home in Brooklyn. At the time of her death, she was penniless.
Man.
Yeah, was just living it up. So what do you think? Do you think it was a joke all along?
I do. I think the simplest explanation is usually the truest, and I think they were just con artists, but pissed that their sister robbed them blind.
Yeah. I think initially they were just, you think about like, you see this a lot like with the Salem Witch Trials, right? I think that they were just bored kids playing. I think it really did start out as the innocent, like, ooh, this house is supposed to be creepy, let's scare mom. Like, I think it really did start out innocent. And then they got attention, and then they were able to be in the spotlight. They were able to make money, and then you realize they're only 11 and 14. And then you have the sister that swoops in and sees all this money that can be made. So I think it was just, I really do think it started out as an innocent prank, just kids being kids. And it just spiraled out of control. And I think it's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, people really change when it comes to money.
Yeah. But it makes me so sad because it's such a great story. And it's like, oh, but, I just can't imagine cracking your toes and your joints that loud. I think that is impressive. Like, how did you do it?
Like, was everybody just like really quiet? Like,
yeah, like
how quiet would that space have to be to hear someone like crack their toe?
And I'm thinking in that time, it's not like they have like this crazy or any technology. So how do you crack a toe so loud that a whole auditorium can hear you?
And like, who? It's usually like you ask a spirit, like, can you knock? Can you turn on this light? Like, are they asking, like, can you crack a toe?
Yeah, right? Like, it's just weird.
It's that part, I'm just like, that's the weirdest noise to manifest, quote unquote.
Right? I just feel like, I do believe in spiritualism, but again, like, I think that true mediums and folks are few and far between. Unfortunately, I think there's probably more people like the Fox sisters out there trying to make a buck versus, I do think, we would pay anything to talk to our loved ones that crossed over and know that they're okay. And it is, I'm like on the Houdini camp, and that it makes me so sad that people take advantage of that, you know? Listen, we're going to talk about my most favorite place I have ever been in my life. Salem, Massachusetts. It is absolutely beautiful. Stephen and I went there. Stephen's my husband. For those of you who might be new to our podcast, but we went there last summer, and I was a little nervous. I'm like, okay, Sarah, I had to have like a real talk with myself. I was like, you might have built this up too much. Like you might get disappointed. Like bring it down. It far exceeded every amazing expectation I had. It was my most favorite place. Like if it weren't for the winters, I would just pack up my shit and go. But
I'm sure it's not so bad.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty cold. It's pretty frigid.
Just for thermals, you're good.
Listen, I have come to the conclusion I just need to have a summer home there. So I'll fly south, my home in Rock Hill for the winter, and then I'll head on back to Salem for the summer months and Halloween, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say it is the coolest damn city I've ever been to in my life. There is just such this air of magic and awesomeness about it and wonder and this sense of crazy history that is there. And like when Stephen and I booked our trip, we rented a car because there's probably not like realistically going to be that much to do in Salem. So, we can go to Boston for a couple of days. A week is not long enough in Salem. There's so much to do. It's amazing. So amazing. The people are wonderful. The food is delicious, and the history is quite wicked. And we're going to talk about the witch trials specifically in this podcast because I have so much to tell you about with Salem. I could just go all over the place, but we're going to focus just on the witch trials and the murders that happened there, and that's going to be our focus for this. But in case you're listening and you're not really familiar with Salem, just a quick rundown. It is a historical coastal city. It's in the county of Essex, Massachusetts, and it's located on the North Shore region. Now, it actually used to be one of the busiest seaports in the country. And a lot of people don't realize that about Salem. Like, when you think of Salem, you obviously think witches, but it was actually one of the seaports. It was like, that was their business. Like, that's what they did. And you'll see how things at the end of the story come full circle from witches, seaport, back to witches. I'm gonna put that all together for you throughout the story, okay? Again, if you haven't been there, Salem does a really good job of, being the witchy city. The police officers literally have witch logos on their badges and their cars. I've seen it. It's real. And I think this is so freaking cool. So the public elementary school is called Witchcraft Heights, which I think is amazing. I would like some merch, please. And then the athletic teams go by the name The Witches. So
awesome.
they are all about it, and it's so cool. So if you haven't been, witches are your thing. If history is your thing, Halloween is your thing, Salem is the place for you. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. And so let's kind of talk about just the witch hunt. Like when did this happen? So Salem, like all of America, was inhabited by Native Americans, and we came over and stole their land as we do. And so Salem was colonized in 1626. And so these witch hunts began in Salem from February 1692 through May 1693. Now, that's not really that long of a time period, like you may think. Like you hear in Europe, like it was a lot longer than that. But sadly enough, in the duration of about a year, more than 200 people were accused of witchcraft, 30 people were found guilty, and 19 were executed by hanging, and one other man was pressed to death by refusing to admit that he was a witch. So that is not a long period of time for such horrible things to have happened.
That honestly seems like actually a pretty large population of such small towns at that time.
Yeah, well, you have to consider, like, it was a very small population, not like it is today, obviously. And it blows my mind. It just absolutely blows my mind. And so you might be wondering, like, how did this shenanigans begin? Like, like, we come to America, we take over this land, and then a few years later, we start this witch hunt. Like, what started this? So you're going to see a lot of names that are going to appear quite often, and we're going to talk about how those names impacted this whole massacre and compare it to names that we might see today, that famous names and the one percenters and whatnot that we see, and a lot of, unfortunately, sad similarities that we still see happening today that happened back in 1692.
Was there a Lindsey Graham, maybe?
Listen, that will probably be whenever I do my story on the Civil War.
There we go.
From a different part of the
It'll be like his great grandma that he's named after, that little bitch.
Right. Don't even get me started on that fella. Shake that off. All right. So we're in January in Salem, 1692. So it's freaking freezing out there. Crops are not doing well. It's primitive times, to say the least. But then something strange happens inside of the family. Their last name is Paris with 2 R's, and something really weird happens there. So it's sleeting, it's snowing, and the young girl.
Would you say it's cold as a witch's titty?
You could say that, or you maybe shouldn't say that, unless you want to be accused of witchcraft. So Betty Paris and her cousin Abigail start to twitch and twist with their bodies into strange shapes. So they're starting to act, bewitched, if you will. And then they start speaking in tongues, like crazy words that make no sense. So they're twitching and they're talking in this weird tongues.
Could it be they're just freezing?
Maybe they're just freezing. I don't know. But Betty alarmed her father, the Reverend.
Oh, here. Great. Every great story starts with a reverend.
Yeah. So Betty alarms her father, Reverend Paris, immediately to call the doctor because something's wrong,
Okay,
and
so wanted to call the doctor. I'll give him that. What
does the doctor do? Well, the girl's bewitched. Obviously, it's not the fact that she could be bored, malnourished, freezing, you may say.
Have a parasite.
I mean, that's the only explanation that it could be. And so, of course, concerned Reverend Paris is asked, like, who could have done this? Like, who could have bewitched my daughter? Like, how could this, or these girls, like, what could have happened? And so when they asked who do you think they might blame? Could it be, like, the one person of color that is their housekeeper and their slave, or I shouldn't say housekeeper, that's nice, their slave Tabitua, who, or I always say it wrong, it's Tabitua, who is not a white Puritan. Well, of course, she would be to blame. It's witchcraft. She put a hoax on them completely. And so Betty and Abigail said that Tabitua, their slave who worked for them, did it. And now she's from Barbados. She and her husband are from Barbados. They're slaves to the Paris family. And she always played with the kids, like fortune telling games and just, just fun little games that were harmless. But of course, Puritans see anything fun as witchcraft. It's evil. It's the work of the devil. And so there are also two other women that end up getting accused at the time, and it's Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, who also, guess what? They're women that are also not very liked in the community. So these kids blame Tabitua. Tabitua goes, they take her to jail, obviously. And then, so basically this trial is such a freaking joke. She says, I am not a witch. I do not practice witchcraft. And they force a confession out of her. And so if they can basically force a confession out of you, then you don't go to the gallows, but you end up going to jail. And we've been to these jails, like mimics of what they look like. And they're basically like dog crates for adults. There's not even room to fully stand or lay. So like you're basically in this crazy crouched position. And if you needed straw or hay to keep warm, that's how they kept warm there, or food, you had to pay for it. So like you might think, well, oh God, thank God that, her life was spared, but where she went was horrible. And so as she tries to plead her case, they're like, we know, like they basically get this forced confession. And then she goes on to blame the other two people. So the other two ladies, Sarah Good, who was a poor elderly, who was homeless, and then an elderly woman named Sarah Osborne. So, and they're also witches. So they're like, great, I've got a confession and I've got two more people, and that's what they're looking for. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to find you guilty of practicing witchcraft, but because, you confessed, we're not going to hang you. We're going to just throw you in this jail.
Forever? Okay? Or like...
Until they can awake in the scene and whatnot and figure out what to do with you. Because they're like, we don't know what to do with this, but we're not going to hang you. But we're just going to let you hang out here in this jail.
For an indefinite period of time.
Yes. Yeah. Just until we figure it out. And so basically, this is where hysteria breaks out, okay? So as the weeks pass, other girls start claiming to have been infected by witchcraft. They accused other townspeople of torturing them, and a few of the so-called witches on trial even named other people that were witches so that they could just not be hung. They're like, oh God, yes, I did it, but Adell also is a witch, and Amanda's also a witch. And so then they're coming after you, and then you do the same thing. And then we're just like going down a crazy rabbit hole. Now, what you're going to see, like whenever I really get into the story, it ends up becoming a way where people catch on to say, I don't like you, Adell. I think that you're too mouthy. I don't like your opinions. I don't like that you're outspoken. So I'm going to get rid of you. And you know how I'm going to do it? I'm going to act crazy and call you a witch. And
so like I said, Lindsey Graham is surely related to these people.
And so it's like, we need to like we need to go on Ancestor.com. Like,
you'll just see a bunch of women that just look exactly like that bitch.
Like, you're a witch. You're a witch. So basically, his family would be the judges. They wouldn't be the ones.
Right. They would not. Yeah, they would be the accusers, not the accusees.
Exactly. So then townspeople start getting smart, and it's like, people that are talking back, giving me some trouble, or I just may not like you, I can take care of you because I'm going to call you a witch, and I'm going to start acting crazy. And then you either have to admit that you're a witch and go to the gala, or say that either admit that you're a witch, go to this horrible jail cell and name other people, or you just say, no, I'm not. And if you don't admit that you're a witch, guess what happens to you? You get hung. Those are your options. Okay. So whenever we're talking about this court, getting back to Lindsey Graham, whenever we're talking about judges and whatnot, there's something you got to know about these judges. Okay. This could be this is me talking about, this isn't factual, this is just me, Sarah's facts. I think this is when you start seeing the first taste of America's first one percenters, okay, in this small colony. Because these judges have a lot in common here. They're wealthy merchants, high-ranking militia officers. All 9 had been judges for years and were all members of a governor's council. 6 of them were also related, and 5 of them had attended Harvard, a training ground for young ministers, yet none of them became ministers. So they're basically like a good old boys club, if you will. And according to a book by Emerson Baker, A Storm of Witchcraft, these 9 judges were considered the elite of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And so in this book, Baker writes, as a group, the judges represented the proverbial 1%. The merchant elite, who were wealthy, basically exercised power in the social and political and military circles. In short, they were the super rich of Massachusetts. Simply calling them merchants really shortchanges what their wealth was. So there you go. These people are all the 1%ers, okay? So it's really sick. But these people range in age. The youngest judge was 40. One was 67 and one was 60. So they were all between that middle age, kind of not very progressive, if you will. Now, where this is going to get, in case you're wondering, also, just a fun fact for you, Nathaniel Hawthorne is related to Judge Hawthorne here that sentences these people. And it was his great-great-grandfather. And he is so ashamed of him, he changes the spelling of his last name because he doesn't want to be associated with Judge Hawthorne.
So just for the listeners, Nathaniel Hawthorne is the guy that wrote The Crucible, right?
Yes, and The Scarlet Letter.
Yep.
Well, actually, no, I don't think Nathaniel wrote The Crucible.
I always get those two mixed up.
Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote The Scarlet Letter, but The Crucible, I think, was somebody else. Hang on, I'll tell you who. The Crucible. Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible. Yeah. But yes, so Scarlet Letter is Nathaniel Hawthorne, whose great-great-grandfather was Judge Hawthorne, who was one of these judges in this horrible thing. And I also just want to say, I also stayed at the Hawthorne Hotel, which I highly recommend if you're booking a trip to Salem. It was wonderful. It was amazing. Bewitched, the cast stayed there whenever they were filming. And it's an amazing place. So I'm going to recommend that place for you too. So this podcast might be a little, when I was writing my notes, I was just going to leave it at, this many people were hung. This one person was pressed to death. But I really thought that it was very important that we say their names on this podcast and we say who they were because they deserve that. Mind you, none of these people were witches. They weren't evil. They were just people that you're going to see spoke out against the 1%ers. They're the people that questioned authority. Not all of these people are women. Some of these men are progressive that also spoke out saying this is crazy. So guess what? We got to take care of that. We can't let that happen, And so,
even if they were witches, this is just complete nonsense either way to do this to people.
Horrible. And so I just, I toyed with making it shorter, but it just didn't feel right to me. I felt like we needed to say their names and just say a little segment about who they were. So bear with me because I'm gonna read all of them. Now these, remind you, these are not the people that were just accused. These were the people that died, okay? These are the ones that didn't do what everybody else did and say, I'm not a witch, or that said, I am a witch, and here are some other names for you. These are people that says, I am not a witch, and I'm not going to admit it, and I'm not going to turn in anybody either. So they're heroes in my mind. So we're going to start with the first person that was hung, and her name is Bridget Bishop. She was around age 50. And she was a widow that lived in Salem. And she had a bad reputation around town because guess what? She basically had run-ins with the law. She wasn't the first person to be accused, mind you, but she was the first person to actually die because she would not admit that she was a witch. And so she was brought to trial on June the 2nd, found guilty, and then they hung her at the gallows on June 10th.
Do we know what her run-ins with the law were?
She's progressive. She was a widow. She owned a lot of land. She left a lot of land. That's the big thing. She owned an apple orchard. And so there was talks about hey, I can knock her off, take her land, here we go. And she was, back then, women, hell, sometimes I feel like even today, women were property. And here's a woman that owns property because she's a widow and she's a smart woman and she doesn't look to marry quick and take on, those roles that women should have taken, or were told that they should take on. And so she would speak out about it and people didn't like her. They're like, oh, here's this woman, property owner, has the audacity to question the law. She's got to go. So I took care of her. She's the first one. Second one, Sarah Good. You'll remember us talking about her a little while ago. Now, she was one of the first three. That she was the one that Tituba, like, Sarah Good. Like, she was one of them. So she was accused, but then she was also, she also goes to the gallows as well. She lived in the Salem village. She was the wife of William Good. And at the time of the witch trials, she was poor and pregnant and would often go door to door in Salem begging for handouts while her husband worked as a day laborer. She was one of the first people accused, as we mentioned, when the, let me see. So her trial started on June 29th, and then they hung her on July 19th. So see, a beggar.
Really fast.
A pregnant beggar. Can't have that.
And they didn't care that she was pregnant. They were bringing into like, all the unborn baby crap.
This child would be like a demon child. So that, of course, that baby had to go too.
Of course, the baby was also evil.
Yes. So you see how absurd this is? Next, Elizabeth Howie, age 57. Elizabeth lived in Topsfield and was the wife of a farmer. Much like Bridget Bishop, she had also been accused of witchcraft before. And in her previous case, she was accused of bewitching a local girl, but there were no charges brought up. But then she later refused admittance to an incident, and then she was accused of witchcraft again. They said that she afflicted girls in the Salem village, and she was arrested, brought to trial on June 29th, executed July 19th. So again, they're just
the same day they executed
the other. Yes,
Sarah Good.
Yes, so they're just next. Susanna Martin, age 71.
Like, come on, dude. To make it that far back then.
Right?
Dude.
Susanna Martin, poor widow, and much like Bridget, she was accused, like a lot of these women had been accused before, but this was before the frenzy started. So she was accused of tormenting people as a specter. So what they would say is like, say that I'm asleep or something, but I'm going to send like an image of me to come to you at night and do like crazy, wicked stuff to you. And so that's what they said she did to people.
Oh, so people had bad dreams of her.
Yeah. But no, I mean, she was really there, like sucking the life out of them, just like Winifred Sanderson.
Yeah, of course. It was real. It wasn't
a
dream or complete fabrication.
So again, I mean, I guess July 19th was a huge killing spree because same thing. She was accused on June 29th, took her on July 19th. Rebecca Nurse, age 71, like in her 70s as well. She was an elderly grandmother and a wife of a farmer, and she was a very popular woman with that had a long-standing feud with the Putnam family over border boundaries between their adjoining land. So she disapproved of the controversial appointment of Samuel Parris, which remember that name, right? Who was a close friend of the Putnams. And so they basically accused her, they testified against her, and they had found her not guilty. But then they read the verdicts out loud in the court, and then the girls that were supposedly afflicted started going nuts. And they begged them to reconsider their decision. And so then they came back with the guilty verdict. And then she was also, because I mean, it's crazy. Like these girls just start going bananas. Like,
yeah, that I always think of the Crucible.
Yes.
It's just like, wow, you little bunch of buttholes, for lack of better words.
Right? Okay. So on to Sarah Wilds, age 65. She was a wife of a local judge, John Wilds, and she had a bad reputation because in 1649 she was accused of fornicating out of wedlock. Ooh, she was Lucy Goosey. And in 1663, she was accused of wearing a silk scarf.
What a slut.
What a slut. But then after she married married a widower, John Wilds, in 1663, John and Mary Reddington, the brother and sister of her new husband, of her new husband's late wife, so her in-laws, I guess, kind of in-lawish, developed a hatred for her. And then they began spreading rumors that, guess what? Not only are you a slut, you're a witch.
Yeah, of course. It goes hand in hand, you know.
Absolutely. And so after, so Mary ends up passing away, but then her friends still continue to harass Sarah and like just see to it that, you know, this girl gets taken care of. And so after, so basically, they just keep at it. And then they finally bring her to trial and they hang her. So it's like her accusers have passed away, but the friends of the accusers just had to see this through. Because, I mean, justice had to be served. Like, you cannot wear a silk scarf in public. Unbelievable.
I hope she wore it around her neck when she was hanged. Like fuckers.
I was like, really? So, all right. So now we're going to get to our first male, who was also a Reverend George Burroughs. He's in his 40s, and he was the only Puritan minister to be accused and executed during the witch trials. And so basically he was a minister in Maine during the 1670s, but he left a settlement and then he was attacked by a bunch of Native Americans. And then he later settled somewhere else in Massachusetts before he was asked to serve as a new minister in Salem Village. And so the residents of Salem just didn't like him. They were just like, we don't like this guy. Like, no.
Did he like
he's
smell
outsider. I mean, who knows what those Native Americans probably did to him? Like, you know, we don't trust him. So they never paid him a salary. So he had to borrow money from the Putnam family to support his family because everybody paid him a salary. And so, so when he stopped being paid altogether, he's like, I've got to leave Salem and return to Maine because I've got to support my family. And so then this Putnam family sues him for failure to repay his debt after they accused him of witchcraft.
Well, like, how was he possibly supposed to repay anyway? He can't turn up.
So Burroughs is arrested, brought to trial on August 5th, executed August 19th.
What is up with the 19s in this story?
I know, like, right? That's weird. Okay, so that's our first male to have gone to the gallows. Next, we have Martha Carrier. She was age 33, and she lived in Andover and was the wife of Thomas Carrier. And she was also, guess what, a little too outspoken. She talks a little too much.
She had to go.
She had to go.
It makes you think of Addams Family Values. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like the Black Widow that Uncle Fester marries.
Yes.
She had to go.
So true. So Carrier was the first person who lived in Andover, which was near there, but she was accused during Salem Witch Trials. And her neighbor, Benjamin Abbott, after the two had a dispute over land, immediately fell ill. And so her children were also accused and were coerced into testifying against their own mother.
Jeez, come on, people.
Brought to trial on August 5th, executed on the 19th of August. So it's like,
what is up with the 19th?
Dispute with her neighbor. He falls ill, so obviously she put a hex on him, right? But then her own children testify against her. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just crazy. All right, John Willard. He was in his 30s, and he was a deputy constable in Salem at the time of the Salem Witch Trials. And he was one of the first people in Salem to speak out against the witch trials. So he's like, this is stupid. Like, this is dumb. So because he was responsible for helping to arrest the accused witches, he soon began to doubt so many could really be guilty of witchcraft. It's like, this just isn't right. And so he quits his job in protest. He's like, this is wrong. And so shortly after, they decide to accuse Willard himself by Ann Putnam, another name that we, the Putnam family. Ann Putnam Jr., who also accused him of beating her baby sister to death. Willard was not immediately arrested, but his in-laws, the Wilkins family, began to grow suspicious of him. Willard was accused a second time by his wife's grandfather, Bray Wilkins, after Wilkins fell ill upon receiving a cross look from Willard.
A crossed look?
Look, like a mean look. And then all of a sudden, basically, like, that's what you do when you put spells on people. You give them a look.
You're like drawing an aura.
That's exactly right. And then he dies, and his body was found bloody and beaten. And according to court records, to the best of our judgments, we cannot apprehend that he died an unnatural death by the hands of witchcraft. I mean, obviously, that's what I would think. I
I just think it's easier to call these people a little bit stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I understand, not great education, but just, this is the problem with whenever you have religion and religious thinking guide logic.
And Lindsay, I'm saying this for you in light of recent activity, when you don't separate church and state, here you go. Just saying. Just my comment on our new our new Supreme Court justice, all the terrible questioning that came from him.
And everybody voting no, unanimously saying, like, yeah, she's totally qualified, has great background, but I'm voting no.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes.
Okay.
Sound familiar? We've changed so much since then, in the 1600s. So here we go. So John actually already fled Salem Village, because he knows that he's worked in this and he knows what they're coming for him. So they issue a second arrest warrant, and they basically hunt him down and arrest him in New Hampshire. And so it's crazy. Like, they're like, we've got to find this guy. And, like, they hunt him down. And so all these people confessed. All these people confessed that he was definitely a witch, and that he even afflicted a girl, Ann Putnam Jr., she's been a victim of quite a lot of these stories. If that sounds familiar, that's name. But she said that she saw many ghosts of people Willard allegedly killed, and that he was brought to trial on August 5th, executed on the 19th. So that's evidence. I saw the ghosts of the people that you killed. Well,
I just love that the logic is that these witches can do all of these supernatural things, but they can't just, disappear from trial.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because they do like these reenactments in Salem, and you can go and see. They still have the original documents, like court documents that you can see, and it's so crazy, because I'm probably wrong, but one of the accused, and I feel like it was Bridget Bishop, and I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me. That is what she said. She's like, if I were a witch, then I would be out of this situation, and I would, I wouldn't be in a situation if I were a witch. So she tried to use logic, and they were like, oh, no, like, you are a witch.
Thought
about it. Like, what do you mean? Like, are you threatening us? And so you could not reason with these people. Unless they could get a confession out of you or send you to the gallows, you could not win. You couldn't.
It's just like in Batman with the Scarecrow, like, execution or exile.
I mean, it's
execution by exile.
It's horrible. So we're going to go on to George Jacobs Sr., age 72. And I know you mentioned earlier, like, to make it to your 70s in such primitive times, and then this is how you go out. Like, that's just, I don't know. I have a lot to say about that.
At least they went out remembered.
Well, that's the truth. Well, George was accused of witchcraft by several people during the witch trials, including his own granddaughter, Margaret Jacobs. He was a reluctant churchgoer and was an outspoken critic of the Salem Witch Trials. Dun dun dun.
So he didn't like church.
He's like, I think this is wrong. He was first accused by his servant, Sarah Churchill, who also accused his granddaughter, Margaret Jacobs. His son, George Jacobs, was accused as well, but he evaded the arrest. And many people testified against George, including almost all the members of the Putnam family. He was found guilty on August 5th, executed August 19th. And then after that, Jacob's family retrieved his body from the execution site and buried him on the family land. Which I'm like, fuck you. You're the ones that turned me in.
Yeah, why did they do that?
Exactly. Ugh. All right. John Proctor, age 61. John Proctor now is a wealthy farmer. He lived on the outskirts of Salem Village, but guess what? He was also an outspoken critic of the Salem Witch Trials.
And he had to go.
He had to go. He often threatened to beat or whip the afflicted girls for their role in the witch trials. I like John.
I like him. And a lot of just because it's top of mind, I think Gentleman Jack season 2 is about to start on Sunday. It's Ann Lister, pretty much. If she weren't in England, in Salem at this time, she would have definitely been, a witch, accused of being a witch, because she was a woman who pretty much behaved like a man and took care of her land, married another woman in secret.
Adell, it's the devil.
But what I love about her and John Proctor is something about these two. She always threatens to horsewhip people.
I mean, listen, I am not a fighter, but sometimes these girls just need it. I mean, some desperate times.
Flogging.
I mean, yeah, John's not wrong. Let's just be real. And I'm going to tell you something really sad. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to finish reading. So we still have some more people, unfortunately, that died. But I am going to tell you that these girls that did this, guess what happens to them?
They get dysentery.
Nothing. They all pretty much live normal lives after this.
Little fuckers.
Yeah.
That's so typical, though. Of course they do.
Sickening. But anyway, with John, which I love that he threatened to beat or whip the afflicted girls for their role in the witch trial. Yeah, you're not wrong, John. But his wife, Elizabeth, was also arrested on charges of witchcraft. And the afflicted girls turned on John during his wife's examination. And not only is she a witch, but guess what? So is John. And so basically his entire family is arrested on charges of witchcraft. And Proctor, he knows what's up. He knew that Salem was in mass hysteria. He wrote a letter to the Boston clergy in July asking that they intervene and move these trials to Boston. So, I mean, he's like me. I write Lindsey Graham. I write my folks all the time. And I feel like John is like this. John's like, hey, we need some help here. This is not okay. But the clergy responded too late to save Proctor. He was still brought on trial on August 5th and executed on August 19th. But his remaining family members were never charged or found guilty and pardoned. So Proctor's body was reportedly retrieved from the execution site and secretly buried on his farm. So even though he was too late to save himself, he did help save his family and other people. Alice Parker, her age is unknown, but she was the wife of a fisherman, and a couple lived in Salem where Alice was known as an honest woman, but she had a reputation of clairvoyance, and on one occasion successfully predicted that her friend's husband had died at sea. And so on May 1692, a afflicted girl, Mary Warren, suddenly accused Alice of being a witch. And so during her trial, she made several surprising accusations against her, claiming that Parker bewitched her mother to death, made her sister ill, and drowned several men and boys in the sea, including a man named Thomas Wasgate and his entire crew, who drowned after their ship sank, which is totally Alice's fault, 100%. And so she was brought to trial on the 9th, executed on September 22nd. So she's such a powerful witch, she could make an entire fleet go down.
I think they had her mistaken with a siren, the
right.
The ladies that make
the thing too. It's look at these trials, and it's there's no evidence, there's nothing. It's just it's horrible. It's horrible.
And it's just a bunch of little girls driving all of this, which really drives me nuts.
There's a lot of theory and speculation on one, the girls, were they egged on by who their family was? Possibly. Two, one of the theories is that they could have had poisoning from this rye bread that was popular at that time. So they really could be having fits and whatnot and hallucinations. Like, that's true. But to take it as far as calling someone a witch and then all this stuff happening, it's just like a whole nother level of craziness. And then some theories say that these girls are just bored. They're just looking for drama. I mean,
I think they just liked having this amount of power.
They're like, you have these kids, and I watched a thing on History Channel that said, you have these girls that from the time that they're born, like, they're basically like, you're going to go to hell for anything, and they live these crazy strict lives. And so it was a way of basically getting some attention, it's a lot. I think it could be a combination of all of those things.
They're really just like the original Mean Girls.
Yeah, except for like people fucking die a lot, and like what we're talking like maybe a little over a year. Like, you would think that I always thought before I went to Salem that these witch trials went on for years, but it wasn't. And then another misconception too is none of these witches, so-called witches, were ever burned. They were all hung, except for Giles, who we'll get to. He was pressed to death. But
I don't even think
overseas,
I don't even think these should be called trials, though. I think that's a disservice to what actually happened to these people. These were just hearings and blatant just prejudiced judgment. Gonna murder you. There was no type of trial.
This is not a trial. And then it's like the witch trials overseas happened for several years, and they would get burned at the stake, but no one got burned at the stake here. But when they would hang them, like, they wouldn't do like a quick release. And so they would literally swing and just have a slow death, and people would just stand there and watch it. And it was just, it's horrible. It's absolutely human nature at its fucking worst.
Oh, so they purposely strangled them to death?
Pretty much, yeah. It wasn't a quick, drop. It was, like, a slow, painful, and then everybody's watching, and you didn't even do anything. And it's terrible. And the thing, and I'll continue on, but just kind of going off topic here, the thing I love about Salem, Massachusetts so much is that we did several tours, and some of the greatest tours I've ever been on are in Salem, Massachusetts. And the thing that whole city believes is that they have to tell the story over and over and over and over again because it could happen again. And it has happened. So look at gay rights, look at Black Lives Matter, look at women's rights. People have died because similar things like this. And so it's that city's mission to be open. Like, it is like Pride Central, and it's like, it's that city's mission to tell this story and get it ingrained in people's heads that this could easily happen again and again and again, and that humans, sometimes we don't learn from this, and we see that play out all the time, and that's what I love about that place, is it's their mission to tell this story and to make sure that these people are never forgotten. I think it's beautiful. Like, it really is. Yeah. It's a special place.
It definitely seems effective with Massachusetts being so ahead of the curve on a lot of laws, especially like
they get
gay marriage and things,
Like, I would say that Massachusetts, especially Salem and that whole area, they're a place to learn from their past, and they make it a point that no, we can't have this happen again. So I think other places like the South, I think we're coming around too, and we're learning from our past. And we all have a past in America. Nobody in America has a beautiful past. I mean, we were founded on stealing land away from people and trashing it, like we talk about all the time. But I think the towns and places that are embracing who they were and saying, hey, we gotta change, and we've got to be open, and we got to continue to tell this story so that it doesn't happen again. And we need to honor the people whose lives were taken. It's important. It's important that those stories live on. And Salem does it better than any place I've ever been. But they're just a whole step above. Just, I don't know. You have to go. It's a special place. It is such a special place. It really is. But on that note, I'm going to continue on with the victims since we still have a few more. Isn't that horrible? This is horrible. Like, are you seeing the similarities in all of these people?
Yeah, you could have just summed this up in one story, but with several people's names.
Yeah. But basically,
I'm not saying that you should have, but it's just like, okay, of course that happened too.
Yeah, but I want to I want to shout out, you know, they deserve it. Mary Parker was in her 40s, widower, and same thing. She was accused by somebody else because...
She was a widower?
Yeah, a widower. She was basically accused of afflicting a lady, and then afterwards they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I was mistaken, it wasn't her. Oops, my bad.
Oopsies.
And Pudeator, Pudeator, in her 70s, widow. I see a lot with the widows, which is crazy. She had worked as a nurse and a midwife, and she had a reputation of having a sharp tongue and quarreling with locals. And she was accused by Sarah Churchill and some of the other girls in Salem Village because they said that some of her medical supplies, such as foot ointments, were basically objects of the occult.
What?
Yeah. Yep.
My question is, did it work? And if the person who received it, you know, felt better from it, did they really care?
Right, exactly. Wilmot Red, we don't know the age, but Wilmot actually lived in Marblehead, which I've been, and it's beautiful. But she was the wife of a fisherman. And like Bridget Bishop, other folks just didn't like her because she had been accused before. She wasn't popular. She often quarreled with others. She had a very abrasive personality, which, hello, have you ever met anyone from New England? I love their abrasive personality. It's the fucking best. But they didn't like her, so she had to go. She was too outspoken. So same thing. So it's just terrible. So she was executed as well, but on September 22nd, not the 19th. Margaret Scott, age 77. Guess what? Widow. 7 children, but only 3 survived childhood. And after her husband died, Scott was left destitute and forced to beg from neighbors. And people just thought she was kind of annoying, you know? So we had to get rid of her. So she was a witch. Done.
Yeah, like a witch would be going door to door begging.
Begging.
Like,
exactly.
Come on.
Exactly. Samuel Wardwell, age 49, carpenter from Andover, also a well-known fortune teller and practitioner of English folk magic. It is believed that his work in the occult led to his witchcraft accusation. So he was accused and jailed in Salem.
Okay, that one somewhat makes sense. Like he's learning about the occult.
I mean, but do you blame him? He's probably like, well, shit. I need to find out what this is about if I'm probably going to get accused of it. But during his examination, he admitted, hey, like, yeah, I do some fortune telling and I dabble in magic. He said that the devil may have taken advantage of him for those reasons, but that he confessed to making a pact with the devil, but later recanted his confession. Wardwell was brought to trial in mid-September and executed on the 22nd. So I don't know if, like, it was a strategy with him, like maybe if I just tell him that the devil made me do it, and then I think they were just like, yeah, no. Martha Corey, age 72. She lived on the outskirts of the Salem Village and was the wife of a wealthy farmer, Giles Corey, who we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And Corey had a reputation. He was basically he was a child out of wedlock. Okay, so he was just trash. Okay. So Martha was also outspoken. So he's a bastard child, marries someone that's outspoken. So obviously, Salem
They're a match made in hell, according to these people.
Aren't a fan of them. And so during her own examination, she told the judge that we must not believe all that these distracted children say. And of course, in March, Giles Corey testified against his wife in court, stating that she may have bewitched his farm animals and himself. So, he was accused of witchcraft and arrested in April, but he refused to provide any more information on Martha or himself. But then Martha was brought to trial September 9th and executed on the 22nd, just 3 days after her husband had been tortured to death.
So it's
Wow.
like, Corey, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to like roll her under the bus? It's like,
Yeah, like, why did he do that? Was he like,
Like,
maybe if I just give them something, they'll leave us both alone?
yeah, like,
Obviously,
maybe
that hasn't
I'll
worked.
admit it. Yeah. I think these people are desperate and put in desperate situations. Like you said, this wasn't a trial. It was like, we're gonna kill you. We don't like you. I mean, you're an embarrassment to our village anyway. You're married to this outspoken person. It doesn't matter what you do. Like, you're gonna lose.
Yeah, but I just
And
can't
we've got our we've got our last scene.
If Amanda's taken into trial, like, yeah, she's a real bitch, guys.
Yeah, she definitely does witchcraft, and I
Like-
saw her. I'm scared for my life, but she's got to go.
Like, yeah, I'm right there with you guys. Like,
You're
what?
not safe. Like, you're not. Like, and I think that she's probably also hurt our animals. So yeah, she's got to go. Mary Etsy, age 58. She was a sister of an accused witch, Rebecca Nurse, which we talked about, and Sarah Cloyce, and she lived in Topsfield and was considered a well-respected member of the community. But on April 1692, Mary was accused of witchcraft, arrested, then released in May, and then she was accused again a few days after her release and arrested. She was examined and indicted on 2 charges of witchcraft. Etsy was brought to trial in September and executed September 22nd. Like, to get out and to come back. Now, these are all that completes all the folks that were hung. And then we've got Giles Corey, who was age 71, and he refused to enter a plea and he was tortured to death. So Giles Corey was a wealthy farmer who lived on the outskirts of Salem Village. He had a reputation of being an angry, violent man and was once charged with murdering his farmhand in 1676. He was found guilty, but only suffered a fine for his actions. Many locals, including Thomas Putnam, suspected Corey had paid a bribe for his speech. I mean, he rolls his wife under the bus, so probably paid a bribe.
Yeah, but he was found guilty of murdering somebody, and yet these people are getting killed left and right for being witches. And he testified against his wife.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe a little bit of karma came back to him.
Maybe. But on April 1692, Giles Corey was accused of witchcraft, and that's when shit gets real. You can murder people, but do not make a deal with the devil. So Giles Corey refused to enter a plea in attempt to prevent his case from going to trial. He reportedly knew he was going to die, either in jail or on the gallows, and he wanted to avoid being convicted before he did. So as a result, Giles Corey was tortured for 3 days in a field on Howard Street in Salem town in an attempt to force a plea out of him. They basically would just pile on these rocks until they basically just pressed him to death, and he died on September 19th, 1692. Now,
he randomly died on the 19th.
Right? Isn't that crazy?
That's pretty weird.
Also, I want to mention that 2 dogs were also executed during the trials because they thought that they were also possessed by the devil. Black dogs.
Of course. No black cats?
I don't see anything. Oh, I don't know about cats. Lord.
No, those were
probably.
See, it's because the true witches were the black cats, and they knew better.
So, how does this thing come to an end? How do we wrap this up? So, after
kills each other.
Pretty much.
Critters come from space.
He killed off everybody in the village. So, after weeks of these crazy hearings, or formal hearings, Sir William Phipps, who was the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, interceded and to add some formality to the proceedings. So he's like, okay, let me try to come in, add some formality. Maybe we could actually have evidence or, cross-examination, things like that. But over the following year, many trials were held and many people were in prison. As the trials continued, accusations extended beyond Salem to surrounding communities. So after Governor Phipps's wife was accused, that's when it all stops.
I finally reached the right person.
And ordered that a new court be established that would not allow so-called spectacle evidence. And by May 1693, everyone in custody under conviction or suspicion of witchcraft had been pardoned by Phipps. The trials did not officially end until the governor of the colony's wife was accused of witchcraft and ordered to end the trials, but not until after 20 people died. And the thing that I think is so sad is that you just basically you accuse the wrong person, and it's like, oh. And also, what you may not realize about Salem too is a lot of stuff. Like after this happened, it was like they just went back to business. Like, meh, it's fine. Like, oops, sorry. Like, we're good.
If only John Proctor had written a letter accusing the governor's wife in the first place.
Right?
This would have all been over so quickly.
These girls go on to live relatively normal lives. A lot of this, like the jails and stuff, are destroyed. It's almost like they tried to just wipe out that this ever happened. And so they were able to keep like Judge Hawthorne's house, like different things like that. They were able to kind of uncover like the jails they've had to like remake to look like it. Because it's almost like they're like, oh, this didn't happen. Like, we're good. We're moving on now. Back to business after this horrible thing happened. And remember, like the people that were accused and that were in jail, I mean, even though they didn't die, like these conditions, like what that would do to you mentally and physically, I can't even imagine. But they're terrible. You have to Google it and look at these jails. Like we got to go to replicas, and it's awful. But these days, Salem is pretty amazing. It's like Halloween Town Central. But before all of this and this happened, Arthur Miller, who we talked about, who wrote The Crucible in 1952, he came to Salem to try to talk to people, and he said locals would not even talk to him. He said that in the 50s, no one would say anything about it. They would not talk about it. It's almost like this just didn't happen there. And so, as I mentioned early, if you're still with me, early in the podcast, for centuries, Salem's biggest port basically made them one of the New England's most prominent towns because they had that port. But whenever it had fallen on hard times and that port closed, Salem became extremely poor. And so like it goes to like, you have this awesome like New England town thriving. We're not talking about witches. That was way back in our past. It's the 50s, 60s, 1950s and 60s. And we're, all of a sudden we're on hard times. Our port closes. That's what everybody in Salem does pretty much for a living. What do we do? Well, there's a sitcom called Bewitched. What if we could get bewitched here in Salem and we could really embrace this whole witch thing again, make it the witchy city, and then basically take our past and intertwine this, and then ended up working like a charm, honestly. Some of the residents had a huge problem with it because they were like, Samantha Stevens is a witch. Like, in the sitcom, obviously. I'm not accusing Elizabeth Montgomery of witchcraft, but they're like, these people weren't. And so that some of them felt like it was kind of distasteful to do it. But then other people were like, well, no, it's a way to honor these people. And, also it's a great way to get tourists here and market it. And so, so basically it has become the lovable city that we know. They had this huge, statue of Elizabeth Montgomery, right in the center of downtown. It's so awesome. And I really love this because, and I'm going to end with this, so there's an episode of Bewitched that that basically I'm going to read what she says in the story because I think it just sums this up just wonderfully. But in 1970, they were filming Bewitched in Salem, and Samantha Stevens, who was, a sorceress, travels back in time and is put on trial at the Salem Witch Trials. This is one of these episodes. And the accused of witchcraft in Old Salem, she winds up on a trial for her life, like these people. And so this is what she says. She says to the courtroom that she will prove that no 17th century suspect was a witch. How can you imprison someone who can vanish before your very eyes? She demands. Firmly, she sets out Puritan forebearers straight. The people that you prosecuted were guiltless. They were mortals just like yourselves. You are the guilty, she informs the old Selmites before she vanishes. And at last, clearing the air. So, basically, it's Witchy City now, but before it was crazy, awesome seaport. We're not talking about witches, and then Salem starts with witches. So, it just kind of comes full circle. And I think it's great that they embrace witches, and there's so many cool witchcraft shops. There's a shop just for spirit boards. There's a Halloween museum that has all the boo buckets from the 80s. There's just they really embrace it, and they do such a good job of not forgetting the past, like reviving that past and telling those stories. And it's just, I don't know what else I can say about how wonderful Salem is. They turned something really horrific into something great, and they really build on trying to teach people a lesson.
She was feared by the ancient Babylonians, Hittites, Egyptians, Israelites, and Greeks. She's best known from the Old Testament and Jewish folklore. She's described as a hot, fiery female who first cohabitated with man in the Zohar Leviticus.
Wow.
She's rendered by Michelangelo as a half woman, half serpent. Serpent. And christened the patron of abortions by an Irish novelist, James Joyce.
A patron.
Patron of abortions.
Whoa!
So, I don't think this lady needs any more introductions. Obviously badass. She's a winged demon goddess, seductress, original rebellious bad girl. This is Lilith from...
I was going to guess Lilith. Oh, Lilith. And we're not talking about Cheers.
Although, I could see some qualities that are pretty similar with those two.
That's true. Oh my goodness. Oh, Lilith. Can we call her Lil? I feel like that's a hell no.
No, she's Lilith.
I think it's funny that you chose Lilith whenever, when we were talking about in our horoscope, the fierceness of the Leo.
Yeah. And just all this shit going on with like abortion bans and women's rights, and I was like,
this is a good one. Maybe your story today will give us some good protest poster ideas.
I mean, what I in particular love about her is just how much everybody is so freaking terrified of her.
Right?
It's like the coolest thing.
Oh, Lilith. And of course, like, being the 90s kid I was, and you too, I always think about Lilith Fair, which was pretty freaking amazing. So yeah, let's dig into it. I want to know more.
Because I actually didn't realize she was a demon.
No.
And we'll get into, her origin story. But I think most people, at least in like Judeo-Christian society today, know her from the Bible as Adam's first wife, who was... Oh, have you not heard that?
No. Oh. I was like, Adam had a first wife? What?
Okay, well, this might be news to some people.
It was news to me.
So,
listen, I don't remember being taught that. What Sunday school class were you in?
Well, I didn't learn this in church. I learned it in literature. So some people say that there's this... Okay, let's start with Genesis 1:27. It says male and female, he created them. So it doesn't specifically say Eve. And in this depiction, she's made from the soil with Adam. But I think most people hear about Eve and she's made from the rib of Adam. So some people are like, this is a different woman.
Gotcha.
And this kind of ties into her being like, I'm made from the exact same soil you are, and we were made at the same time. I am not your... Yeah, she's like, I'm equal to you, and I'm not going to be submissive. And then, he's just, I don't know, it kind of paints Adam as kind of like a little bitch, too. Like, she just refused to be subservient to him. And she ended up just leaving the garden. She was just like, screw you, I'm out. Bye.
So, let's be clear. Adam didn't leave her. She peaced out.
She left his ass.
Yeah. I'm going to get Lilith. I'm going to get that name like tattooed on my arm with a heart. Lilith.
Oh, yeah. So already she's just like, no, screw you. We're made from the exact same stuff.
Yeah.
And from the exact same God at the exact same time. I'm not, subservient to you.
Yeah, Lilith.
So God sends 3 angels to try to get her to come back, but she's still like, no, I'm not coming back.
I'm not putting up with this shit, okay?
Yeah. So, and then there's like a second depiction of her where she is Adam's demonic, like she has like demon children. And we'll get into that a little bit later, because I don't know, I think there's some like shaming of her. I don't think she's represented correctly, but So she's supposed to be the mother of Adam's demonic children.
Can I do a time out really quick? I think, okay, so the church that Adell and I went to, and you know where I'm going with this, 100%. So it was pretty theatrical, and they would always do like these plays and dances, like interpretive, like dance and plays. And I'm just seeing this one so vividly in my head. I want to create that and start taking that to churches.
Yeah, this needs to be performed.
So if you're out there and you do performance art, I would like to just, suggest that this would be a great one.
Yeah.
This would be an awesome one.
This one could probably go beyond. I think maybe community theater even.
Yeah, like Narrowway Productions.
Oh, yeah.
Like a big Christian production where we live.
Oh, God.
Where they cage, like, animals or whatever.
Yeah.
So we'll leave that alone.
We'll just leave that right there.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just seeing, like, this passion play where, like, she pieces out of the garden, like, these 3 angels come down. She's like, I've had enough of this shit. I am not going back.
No, I'm not going back.
So, like, he needs you. Fuck him. No.
Yeah.
I like this. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and so sometimes it's like she's depicted as being like the demon mother from Adam's children, but also in some stories she has offspring with a chief demon named Samael, which we'll talk about him a little bit later. But what's interesting is sometimes these children are known as incubi and succubi. So incubus and succubus.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Okay.
So yeah, I think once we start digging into the origins of who she could be or what she was, it starts to sound a lot more like an incubus or a succubus in her case. Even
I don't know.
Hag,
I could be wrong, but I'm just going to go on the record that she was just a strong, independent woman, and so they painted this false picture of Lilith.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's cool that she's kind of a seductress and she's like owning her sexuality. So I'm sure that that's already
so of course she's
a
demon.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. The story may change my mind, but right now I feel like she's been created very unfairly already.
Oh, I think she's a hero of her own story.
Yeah, like she's not a demon. She's a shero.
Yeah, totally. So let's start from the beginning of where we think this origin of her comes from. So she's derived from a class of Mesopotamian demons called Lilu or Lilitu, and it means night monster. And they're supposed to haunt people's dreams. So that already makes me think of like the hag or succubus, right?
Yeah.
And these even appear in the story of Gilgamesh. I don't know if you remember those stories. You've heard of Gilgamesh?
Yeah, I do. And for a second, I was thinking Gargamel. I know that's Smurfs.
Gilgamesh. So some accounts, the Lilitu dwell in the desert and open country, and they prey on pregnant women and infants. So I don't know. I kind of like that setting myself. So I don't know. Maybe I'm one of them. The Mesopotamian.
You're a descendant of Lilith.
Aren't we all? She was the original mother to us all.
That's true.
So the Mesopotamian goddess Lamashtu was a winged demon who caused miscarriages and kidnapped infants. And apparently her boobs were full of poison as well. I saw that in one story.
What?
I don't know. So maybe she's derived from that as well.
Oh my
Let's
God,
see.
okay.
The Ardat Lily is a sexually frustrated and infertile female who behaves aggressively towards young men also. So it sounds like there's layers here of like this Mesopotamian era like baddies, I guess.
Yeah.
That sounds like this could be like kind of her origin story.
Okay.
Now,
Supposedly.
yeah, so she hasn't been named yet, right? Like, she's not Lilith, but there are these things that kind of have a similar sounding name for what they're called.
Right.
So her first appearance by name was in Gilgamesh. It was the Gilgamesh and the Hulupu tree. And this is where she's first mentioned by name as Lilith, and this was around 2000 BCE.
Okay.
So a while ago.
Yeah, a little while ago.
So Gilgamesh is an epic hero, and he's searching for eternal life. He slays monsters and has adventures. So that's Gilgamesh.
Okay.
So in this story, this is a quest where he's assisting Inanna, the goddess of erotic love and war. Inanna is growing a hulupu tree, which is actually a willow tree.
Ooh, interesting, Smithers.
Yeah. So she's wanting to make a throne and a bed out of it once it's like grown. I guess she needs the wood. I don't know why a throne and a bed. Like,
She's like, I need matching furniture. Okay, that's what
she wants it to be, you know,
oh my God.
matchy. So at some point, a dragon just makes a nest at the base of this tree.
Sure.
Lilith builds her house in the middle of the tree, and a zoo bird places his young at the top of the tree. So these things just kind of take over her tree. This must be a massive tree.
I was about to say, like, what kind of, this was like the original treehouse thing. You know how like tree houses are like the thing right now?
Oh yeah.
But, like, look at my treehouse resort.
Like, I mean, this is like Home Tree from like Avatar.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you got a dragon at the base, Lilith hanging out in the middle, another family.
A house up there.
I mean, is this like a condo? Is this like? I mean, I'm really.
It's a high rise.
Like, for real.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
You know, the goddess is like, well, these things are in my tree. Like, I need.
Like, I'm trying to make furniture.
Yeah.
Like,
so Gilgamesh kills the dragon, and then the others just flee. Like, the birds fly away, and Lilith runs away to the desert.
Oh, I'm so surprised. I wouldn't think Lilith would.
I know, right? This seems out of character. I feel like she'd like make me leave.
Yeah, that's where I was going with the story in my head. I was like, she's gonna like make me.
Yeah, or like kill him. Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, that's the first time she's actually called Lilith.
So Lilith gets it. So first of all, Lilith is already divorced because of an asshole husband. She gets evicted from her treehouse. Like, I'm feeling kind of bad for her at this point. Like, life has not been good.
Yeah, I mean, what wouldn't make you a demon?
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
After all that.
I'm following her story, her character story.
Yeah. All right, now let's get back into the Bible. This is another mention of her by name. The only mention of a Lilith in the Hebrew Bible, so that's the Old Testament. She appears in the book of Isaiah. Okay. And Isaiah he lived around 742 to 701 BCE. So now we're getting up in the timeline. So it's been a while since that first account of her in Gilgamesh. But, you know, still pretty far away from where we are today. But anyway, in Isaiah 34:14, in which the prophet describes a barren wilderness laid waste by God's final judgment, it says, wildcats shall meet hyenas, goat demons shall greet each other. There too the Lilith shall repose and find herself a resting place. So kind of, you know, getting back to that desert dwelling from where she fled in Gilgamesh.
Right.
So several hundred years later, now this story is kind of talking about her and describing a similar setting. So also what's interesting about this is the text infers that readers are already familiar with Lilith because there's not really much of a description. Like, there's no details. It's like, you know.
We already know this character.
Right. So, I mean, they're describing Lilith just like hyenas, like something you're familiar with. So it sounds like she definitely had a presence, like, throughout this whole entire time.
Right.
And the King James Bible translated the Lilith as the screech owl, but the Revised Standard Version calls her the night hag. So that's where it kind of makes me think of the hag.
Boo hag, the original.
Yeah, and the 1917 Jewish Publication Society's Holy Scriptures call her the night monster.
Aww.
So that kind of takes us back to the Lilu, or Lilitu.
Right.
So, I don't know, it's all kind of painting a story that does sound cohesively like her origin. She's also mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So she appears in a hymn called Song for a Sage, and this hymn was possibly used in exorcisms. I quote, "And I, the sage, sound the majesty of his beauty to terrify and confound all the spirits of destroying angels and the bastard spirits, the demons, Lilith, and those that strike suddenly to lead astray the spirit of understanding and to make desolate their heart." So that was the mention of her there.
Okay.
And I tried to Google pictures of her, and there's not really much there. So
Really?
I do have a few kind of descriptions.
Okay.
So in ancient Near East mythology, demon goddesses were often depicted with wings and bird feet. So you do kind of see her with like these talon kind of feet and wings.
Aww.
And the Talmud, the central text of rabbinic Judaism, it describes her as having long hair and wings. So
okay, like a gargoyle with long hair and wings.
Yeah, I mean, that's about it. Like, I really couldn't find much of. I'm assuming she would be very attractive, like a seductress, like a.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. But I mean, I don't know what was hot back then.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe she's changed with the times. Who knows? Also, so as I was saying, it seems apparent that people were familiar with Lilith and fearful of her. There's even like protection relics that are found for people like trying to protect themselves specifically from Lilith.
Whoa, okay.
So the 5th to the 8th century incantation bowls were used. And you could supposedly trap a demon like Lilith in this bowl if you bury it under your front door. So there have been bowls found like that in those locations.
Okay. So then people were like legit terrified of Lilith.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they were really afraid of her. And these bowls were made by holy people and inscribed with incantations.
Okay.
And then these later evolved into amulets, including the image of Lilith bound, and those 3 angels that I think tried to get her to go back to the garden are on there. And like some prayers are like inscribed on it. And one limestone wall plaque from the 7th or 8th century BCE found in Syria read, "O you who fly in the darkened rooms, be off with you this instant, Lilith, thief, breaker of bones." So she's called out by name as people like really not wanting her to be in their house. And according to this source, this was biblicalarchaeology.com, perhaps Lilith feared being recognized, and if she saw her name in writing, maybe that would ward her off. There's like one theory on why people were putting her name.
Humiliated. She's like, really?
Yeah, like rude. She's probably like, I don't even want to be at your house. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
Like, I don't.
I'm still on Lilith's side so far, I gotta say.
Yeah, I like her.
I'm still there.
I think she and the Jersey Devil should be friends, and we should throw like a party with them.
I agree. I think that they're completely misunderstood.
Misrepresented, yes.
Misrepresented.
So this theory of Lilith being the first wife of Adam actually came about in the Middle Ages. So here again, she's kind of withstanding the test of time. It was called the Alphabet of Ben Sira, and it was by an anonymous author. So it contained 22 episodes, and each episode represented each letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So that's why it's the alphabet. So in episode 5, this includes Lilith, but makes her Adam's first wife, and she refuses to be inferior to Adam. And something about the Middle Ages, they always like to make fun of sexuality. So in particular, they're saying she does not want to be on the bottom. Like, she does not want to do missionary. She wants to be on top. And this is like what is like her final straw with him.
That's her whole reputation. Because she has a sexual preference.
Yeah. So
this is some poor Lilith.
So yeah,
She speaks out for herself and what she wants. If like people are banning her from their homes, like putting jars out so she doesn't come in, kicking her out of the damn tree house.
poor Lilith.
Oh,
So she gets so frustrated with Adam that she says
sure.
aloud the name of God, which is supposed to be like, I don't know, Rumpelstiltskin, I guess. Like, you're not supposed to say it. Like, it's a no-no. Like, you're not supposed to speak the name of God. And she does. So
kind of like Beetlejuice.
Yeah, exactly. So she's so frustrated, she speaks God's name.
I can't do this anymore.
And then, I guess she gains the ability to fly after that. It's kind of unclear. So I'm like,
that's pretty cool. Okay.
So then she, in this story, she flies after she calls God's name, and she flies away to the Red Sea out of the Garden of Eden. And the Red Sea is significant because this is where the Israelites gained freedom from Pharaoh. So there's kind of that symbolism there with her flying to the Red Sea to get freedom from Adam.
Yeah.
And God tells Adam that 100 of Lilith's children must die each day that she is gone. So I guess she's really fertile and has kids really fast. I don't know. And then here there's 3 angels again. So 3 angels are sent to find Lilith, and when they do, she refuses to return to Eden. She claims she was created to devour children, and this is kind of her retaliation against Adam, it seems, to just kill all these kids. So now this is kind of where early on in the episode, I told you she was mostly feared by pregnant women and accused of being like a baby snatcher. So I think this is where that kind of comes from. It takes her to like a much darker place.
I mean, kind of like people that believe in like, you know, it's your choice. Doesn't mean you're a baby killer.
Yeah.
All I'm gonna say.
Right. A lot of this is pretty funny and happening in the Middle Ages and these conversations. And
it's all happening now. She's just like, you do you, man. I don't care.
Yeah, she's like, I don't give a shit.
And now she's a baby killer.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So, I guess the angels kind of run out of options. So they're like, look, if you don't come back, we're going to drown you in the Red Sea. And so to avoid
we're not really asking you, we're just saying you have to come back or we're going to kill you.
Yeah.
What we like.
All right, we were trying to be nice, but now, no, we're going to drown your ass if you don't come back.
We're sick of this game. You're getting waterlogged, bitch.
Yeah, like you're making us look bad to our boss.
Word. Okay.
So, to avoid being drowned, she promised to not harm babies who wear amulets with her name. So they were like, okay, deal. So now, you know, maybe that's why now I want an amulet with her name on it. Just because.
Ew.
But this was such a great quote from the alphabet. It said, man cannot cope with women's desire for freedom, and woman will settle for nothing less. So it's like an endless struggle.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah. So that was the alphabet, which I kind of, maybe that needs to be on our book list. I would love to read it. Because there's other stories too. Like, this is only episode 5.
Wow.
And I love anything that's like a satire, so it sounds like it was kind of a satire poking fun at like a lot of the religions at the time. So
for sure,
I'm already a fan. And the person was anonymous. Obviously, they didn't want.
It was probably written by Lilith.
Probably. It was probably written by the Pope.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So now there's also Lilith in the Zohar. So this is a fundamental Kabbalistic tome, and it was compiled by Moses de Leon in Spain in 1250 to maybe 1305. So here she's still moving on up in time.
Yeah.
Just sticking around. So Kabbalists equals like late medieval mystics. So that's like the kind of people who are writing this and reading this.
Okay. I'm down.
Yeah. So this includes a reevaluation of Genesis 1:27 in the Talmud. Remember whenever I said, and God created man in his image, I think it said created them. So it says, and God created man in his image, in the image of God he created him. male and female, he created them. So this suggests that God created, this sounds so stupid, but this is a theory that suggests that God created a single androgynous being. So it's half male, half female.
Okay.
And then centuries later, the Zohar explains that male and female were separated physically at some point. So in this notion, God made Adam sleep and then he cut Lilith off of him and made them two separate beings.
Okay.
I know. It's like what?
This sounds like a complicated relationship.
Yeah. And then Eve was created, and Lilith, she was created from Adam's rib.
Right.
Lilith is still there. She's just cut off of Adam now. And Lilith just can't stand her. Like, she hates how much she clings to Adam, and she's just like, I can't take you idiots, and she flies away and leaves.
Okay. Yeah, I see it.
So even in the story, Lilith is still painted as an evil hater of men. I quote, she wanders about at nighttime, vexing the sons of men and causing them to defile themselves.
Poor Lilith.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I don't know, she sounds like a vixen to me. I think she's badass.
I think she's an independent person.
She's great.
And I didn't know what to do with her, and heaven forbid she inspired a group of women.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, so they had to make these stories up about her so people would fear her.
Yeah, so even in the Zohar, she tries to seduce King Solomon and almost succeeds, but he notices she has like hairy bird feet, and it's like, oh, you're a demon.
You know what? How dare him? Like, maybe she has some, maybe she's a diabetic. I mean,
yeah. So in this collection, she partners with Samael, and he is the leader of fallen angels. So in the Zohar, this is where he comes from. And God actually fears that they will produce a bunch of demons together, so he castrates Samael. So she is such a bad bitch. She has God afraid of her and her partnership with Samael.
Oh, man.
And then I have some honorable mentions as well, because she's referenced a lot throughout history, as you can tell.
Yeah.
So she inspired many stories, including the White Witch in the Chronicles of Narnia. Supposedly she's supposed to be one of Lilith's daughters, the White Witch is.
Okay.
Which, that character's great, too.
Yeah.
Bad bitch. These are all bad bitches. Love it. So then, in the 20th century, this is when you really start to see Lilith as more of that hero, with Lilith Fair, and being the badass feminist that she is. So in 1972, the writer and filmmaker Lily Rivlin published a groundbreaking article about Lilith in Miss magazine, and the Jewish feminist magazine Lilith launched in 1976.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So I quote, self-sufficient women inspired by the women's movement have adopted the Lilith myth as their own, wrote Rivlin in the 1988 book Witch Lilith. They have transformed her into a female symbol for autonomy, sexual choice, and control of one's own destiny. Lilith is a powerful female, Aviva Cantor-Zuckoff wrote in the first issue of Lilith magazine. She radiates strength, assertiveness. She refuses to cooperate in her own victimization. By acknowledging Lilith's revolt and even in telling of her vengeful activities, mythmakers also acknowledge Lilith's power. So, bad bitch.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I think everybody, well, at least in our generation, Lilith Fair was also the big thing started by Sarah McLachlan with all these really great, talented female musicians.
Yes.
And this, I thought, was just a fun fact to really hit home with how terrified people were of her. So the Babylonian Talmud, an ancient source of Jewish law, states, I quote, "It is forbidden for a man to sleep alone in a house, lest Lilith get hold of him." So, boys, you better not be sleeping alone because she's going to get your ass.
Whoa.
So, that's the story of Lilith. And
Holy shit.
the kind of fogginess of her true origin, but man, she really has evolved and stood the test of time. And
she really has.
Is an inspiration.
So, have you guys ever heard of Scotland's Last Witch?
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't.
I was like, wow. All right. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, Scotland's Last Witch. We're going to go across the seas there. Scotland's Last Witch, Helen Duncan, spiritualist, medium, and the last person to be sentenced under, listen to this and tell me if this doesn't sound like America today. She was sentenced under the 1735 Witchcraft Act. I feel like that's going to come back, guys.
Sounds like the right time period.
The 2024 Witchcraft Act.
For fuck's sake. Yeah, seriously.
So here we go. Let's get into Helen's early years, okay? So she was Scorpio, born on November 25th, 1897, not 1987, like one of us.
Hey.
And during her school years, she would freak out a lot of the students because she would try to like tell them prophecies, and like then she would act hysterical, like like she had been like possessed or something. And so this really, really stressed her parents out. Like it was a big deal because, you know, her mother was a member of the Presbyterian Church. Her daughter's acting like a psychopath.
Can you imagine her having a fit like that in a Presbyterian service? Like they're so like Jesus light.
They are Jesus light. They're Jesus light. Yeah, it's like the Pentecostal.
We're gonna need you to be a little quieter, please.
Yeah, like can you imagine her just like
place of reverence for the Lord?
Yes, yeah, she was not very reverent. And I imagine that's probably how like her mother probably was, like very reverent, and here she is telling kids prophecies and like being
acting like a witch.
Yeah, acting like a witch. And so after finishing school, she did finish school, in case you were wondering.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, she finished school.
She can read.
She can read, she can write. She worked at Dundee Royal Infirmary. And in 1916, she actually got married to Henry Duncan, who was a wounded war vet and a cabinet maker, you know. And he actually thought that his wife's paranormal talents were awesome. He's like, I dig it. Like, yes, I'm into this. And so they had 6 children. She worked part-time at a bleach factory. And Henry like really encouraged her to lean into this like spiritualism and, you know, like, hey, like I really think you have a gift. I think you should embrace it. So she developed her skills as one does to become a physical medium in 1926, which I don't know how you develop those skills, but she did.
She was a pioneer.
She was a pioneer lady. And so she conducted seances in her home. And she was really known for being able to speak to spirits who had recently crossed over. And she would even emit ectoplasm from her mouth. Now, let's talk about a note about ectoplasm in case you're not familiar. So ectoplasm is a substance involved when you materialize a spiritual body. And so supposedly at the end of a seance, ectoplasm is supposed to disappear by returning to the medium's body. But there's never really been any scientific proof of ectoplasm. So that's just one of those
like the popular like early 1900s, like with it looks like cotton coming out of their mouth.
Exactly. And it's supposed to be like the spirits in me, you know, like I have their ectoplasm. Like it's kind of gross.
Okay.
Like I don't even know why that became a thing, but it did. So anyway, word gets around in a small town, like, hey, you know, and you figure like we're in the 1920s, hard times. like, yeah, I want to speak to my like loved one. So she gets kind of popular, you know, having the like, yeah, make it up. Like she becomes like a Long Island medium of Scotland. Like, come on over, you know, like
She got popular in the 1920s?
1920s.
I thought she was born in the 1700s.
She went to school in hang on. She went to school in 1897.
1800s. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, 1800s. Yeah. So she was a schoolgirl in 1897, and in 1926 is when she really.
Okay, so she's
started.
at the turn of that century. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yep. And so, so in 1928, a photographer, you know, she had gotten famous, and so this photographer, Harvey Metcalf, was like, I'm gonna come attend some of these in her home. I'm gonna use flash photography to kind of capture what's happening. So during her seances, he got a picture of Peggy, and Peggy is supposed to be Helen's spirit guide. Okay, so she would always like, yeah, Peggy's my spirit guide. She's gonna walk us through or whatever. Well, when he developed these photos, he found that Peggy was actually a paper mache mask draped in an old sheet. Shocker. I know you guys are shocked you didn't see that come in. So you know, he was like, like, this is not good.
What the
And
fuck
so,
is this?
yeah. And so then in 1931, and I want to be a part of this if it's still around, the London Spiritual Alliance, the LSA, are like, we're going to investigate because they very much like Harry Houdini. Like, we can't have somebody out here like conning people, you know, like we can't have it. We can't. And so they actually tested the ectoplasm. Like they took a sample of it and took it back to their lab, and guess what? It was cheesecloth. I know you're so shocked. So they continued with the investigation. They appointed Harry Price to be the lead investigator. Like I want to have like a badge, just like Sarah Sellers, LSA, here to investigate what's going on here.
Yeah,
like,
I kind of wanted to join all these societies and put it on my resume. And
I did too. She was like, I'm a member of the LSA. What? London Spiritualist Alliance. Like, come on.
I'm kind of a big deal there.
I have a badge, a card also. So
like the
posted up in
timekeeper.
seances, you know, like, hey, everybody calm down. LSA here doing an investigation. Everybody calm down.
I'll continue with the haunting.
I'm just gonna take a sample of this. I mean, maybe we should stop with the paranormal, like investigating and go this route.
Yeah, actually, like,
okay,
they're the proper chains.
TM, I have a new show idea. Instead of like going to haunted places, we're gonna go like shut some stuff down. We'll be like cops.
Paranormal cops.
Paranormal cops. Like, we have a seance going on.
Oh shit, guys. You didn't say goodbye. Rookie mistake.
Now
we're gonna have to close this portal. Everybody get out. Let's call Amy Allen.
Portal. Like, here we go. Adell, I'm sensing a new calling. All right, so Harry Price, right? He was like, this is a hoax. This is just a huge hoax. And so he confronted the evidence to Helen, saying, you know, listen, we got the cheesecloth evidence, okay? We know Peggy's paper mache. Like, we're calling your bluff, okay? And so she got so freaking violent that her husband had to restrain her. Because, you know, this is like, she's got fame a little bit. She's making good money. And here's this goober, like, busting up her thing, you know? And so, you know, he has his report. He's like, listen, I'm going to put this in a publication. I have to make the public aware that you're a fraud. So he, like, basically publishes all this shit.
Just the picture, I think, is all he'd have to do. Look at this paper mache. Peggy.
Actually, I will put that on our Instagram because it's bad. It's really bad. It's like I made it bad.
Oh, no.
It's bad.
Okay.
And so Helen's maid even confessed in detail, like, yes, like, I would help her with the tricks. And then finally her husband even was like, yeah, like we would practice like with ectoplasm. She would just regurgitate cheesecloth, which I'm like, like
She like swallowed it and threw it up?
yeah.
Good grief. Okay.
And so, so basically she's done, right? Like take a bow, Helen. Show's over. So she kind of fades because, this has made headlines. It's basically ruined her. People are like, wow, thanks a lot. Well, then World War II happens, and Helen starts attracting attention of the establishment.
I thought you said the Nazis.
Oh gosh, no.
Hitler.
So, in 1941, so she's been quiet for a little while. So 1941, she speaks with a deceased sailor from the HMS Barham and revealed that the ship had sunk in the Mediterranean. Although this information really happened, the military had kept it a secret. So she's like telling military secrets that the government didn't want out there because 861 British seamen had lost their lives and they weren't ready to tell the families. And so somehow she gets a hold of this information and
spills
it. But then it turns it into a seance where she speaks to a dead sailor that passed away on the ship. And then you have to remember, like, where she's living at the time is actually the home of that Navy base. And so you're talking to military people that they think are their loved ones still out to sea, and all hysteria breaks loose. And so then officers are basically, so she's doing the seance, and officers actually come in the middle of the seance and arrest her because she basically, she also apparently knew the date and location of D-Day Normandy landings, and she was about to reveal it. So she was revealing like top military secrets and doing it like a seance. So obviously hysteria is breaking out. Can you imagine 1941 going to a seance and it fucking getting raided by the government? And so you might be thinking, like, how does this, Helen, how did you get this information? So there was a researcher by the name of Graham Donald, and he wrote that she probably found this information because the loss of the ship, it was actually lost in Egypt in November 1941. And even though they tried to keep it quiet, there were letters of condolences sent to some of the family members. And so it had already kind of leaked. And so she probably, being from that same town, knew someone or knew of somebody. And so, so you know how it goes.
Someone told her a secret.
Yeah. And she's like, I'm back. So they, this time, they're like, all right, Helen, like, you're dealing with the real authorities at this point. And so she was brought to trial at the Old Bailey in London, which doesn't sound
the Old Bailey.
I was like, Old Bailey.
I used to walk by it. The men's health office is
Are you serious?
It's right there on Pilgrim Street, like near Pilgrim Street. I walk past it every morning, the Old Bailey.
Well, Helen was there at trial at the Old Bailey, and she became the last person to be persecuted under the Witchcraft Act of 1735. And so she basically, the trial lasted for 7 days, as she was sentenced to 9 months in London's Holloway prison. And she was even denied the right to appeal to the House of Lords. They're like, nope, like, you gotta go away. Like, you're at risk. And so as a result of this case, the Witchcraft Acts were not repealed until 1951.
Jeez.
That's crazy. And so a formal act of Parliament 3 years later officially recognized spiritualism as a religion. So no one could ever be tried under that. I mean, but who knows, in America that might be coming up soon. So it could resurface. I don't know. So Helen Duncan was released from prison September 22nd, 1944, but apparently she faced a lot of harassment from people up until her death. And so in November 1956, the police raided a private seance that she held in Nottingham in an attempt to prove fraud. And so 5 weeks later, she ended up dying. And so it's just like, on one hand, I'm like, Helen, just stop.
Just stop.
Stop. But I mean, she's like, I'm gonna keep on doing it. And there apparently is a bronze bust of Helen in the town of Callander, I think. And it still gives controversy to this day. Like some religious views in public, like they were like, we don't want her, like, memorialized at all. And so the sculpture actually had to be moved to an art gallery because they didn't want it like on display, like on the streets. So,
Damn.
and just a note about the Witchcraft Act of 1735, basically this act made it a crime to claim that any human had magical powers or was guilty of practicing witchcraft. And it abolished, now they're so progressive, this one, because it abolished the hunting and execution of said witches in Great Britain. And the max penalty was 1 year in prison. But, they're like, we're not going to burn you, but you're going to do some jail time if you pretend to be a
But they
witch.
said it's anyone who claims to have magic powers.
Yeah, that's
I
what it
mean,
was.
wouldn't that be Jesus turning water into wine?
Right.
I mean, isn't that okay?
Isn't that crazy? And I wanted to mention that act because, we kind of laugh about it, but I mean, look what's happening with women's rights here in America, and
Yeah,
it's
just letting
scary.
religious law take over everything is
Exactly.
obviously not a good fucking thing to do. We already know that
Obviously,
throughout history, and why we're here, I will never understand.
me either. And it makes me so mad because, like, yes, was the woman a hoax? 100%. But I'm like, I feel like the punishment was a little, like,
Yeah, it's just
was a
like
little
she's just a
much.
kook.
I,
Let her have her seance. Well, don't give out like military secrets in the
right,
middle of the
yeah.
war.
But at the same time, it's like, like maybe you should do a better job of keeping your military
But loose lips sink ships.
Yeah,
She's
that's
not
very
the reason
true.
they said that.
That is very true. But I don't know. I guess I just feel like, yes, like, I'm definitely on the Harry Houdini camp. Like, you do have grieving people, and like what you're doing, if you're, it's not good in that sense. But I mean, especially before that amendment, like killing people for it, and even for things like, making your own, I don't know,
Potions or
potions or whatever, being barren, like I'd probably be like, yeah, I'd be like a hocus pocus witch, like I never had children. So I suck the lives out of the children. The Salem, that's why I stay so young and beautiful. I mean, it's
I
just,
think I would have actually been okay because I don't think lesbianism was illegal. I think only gay guys.
oh,
Because women already don't have any rights anyway, so who
yeah,
gives a shit if they sleep
who
with each
knows?
other?
It's just, but yeah, I mean, I had never heard of this, but there's a book about it as well. Uh, and I don't know. It's sometimes it's hard to believe that that went away only in 1951. Like
Yeah.
that's a
It's
little
pretty scary with
alarming.
how really far we still have to go.
It
I
is,
was just
especially when you
thinking,
have someone in North Carolina that can literally say the worst thing that ever happened in America was giving women the right to vote. That terrifies me.
mm-hmm,
That's very
yeah,
terrifying. So I think it's important because you probably never heard about this story in history. So I wanted just to kind of bring it to your attention, today. Like just
yeah.
because somebody is a kook or,
You have the right to be a
shorted,
kook.
you don't necessarily, I mean, thank God that she wasn't like, killed for it. But even still, it's like that's a little like really like
It's like, was she mentally ill? Like, or was she just
I
like
mean, you kind of have to wonder that because it's something she
weird,
did
you know?
early on as a child. You know what I mean?
Obviously, yeah.
This was behavior that didn't just develop. You know what I mean? Like it was something that she did very early on. So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's hard to tell if she's as much a fraudster or if she believes the stuff she's saying. Like, I can't
yeah,
tell if she's
exactly.
delusional or just bullshitting people.
Right. I mean, and I also feel like maybe the husband's a little to blame too because he kind of encouraged
Yeah, I
her like this
encouraged
is the
it.
way to make. So like what if you did marry someone and they do have like, they're delusional because we all have our shit, right? but then like to kind of encourage it and to help her perfect it and see a way to make money. Like I feel like she was just maybe just a very eccentric kind of person,
Yeah.
obviously. And then I feel like almost he like, "Look, we can make this into a profit, you know?" And it's like, why didn't he have to do jail time or anything, you know?
Yeah.
I don't
I don't
know. I
know.
don't like
Or
it.
is it almost like when your significant other isn't very good at like painting or something, but you're like encouraging them to paint and now they're trying to like open a store?
Yeah, it's
Like,
kind of
I
like,
don't
I
know.
love your art, but
It's not
you
for
know,
everybody.
maybe we just put it on Marketplace. Yeah, but especially I think during that spiritualism time too, I think, like maybe, I mean, maybe she just wanted to be special or I don't know. But I think
Yeah,
he saw a way to make a buck out of it.
probably.
And I
We
was
can
like,
bullshit people with
yeah,
this.
exactly.
You're kind of weird.
So,
They'll just
but
think
I
it's
mean,
authentic.
I just feel this need to, join these societies. I really do because, I'm ready to learn some new stuff. I'm ready to crack down.
Helen Duncan, the last witch and the last story in our Bad Mama Jammas lineup. Hope you enjoyed this ride through history's wildest women. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and never trust the living.